Hello everyone, this is Rayo Recaps. The story starts with a dark truth. In just 10 years, the Eastern Federation Kingdom will fall apart because of 5 great sins. Everything will be destroyed. To stop this tragedy, our main character decides to watch over the situation, but he never thought it would become such a huge job. At first, he was just a normal guy stuck in modern life. He worked crazy 78-hour weeks with almost no rest. Then fate does something strange. He wakes up in the body of a noble in a fantasy world. At first, it feels like a dream, but then he notices he can't read, and he doesn't have any magic or special powers. He tries to figure out the written words, but he ends up holding a book upside down. The butler is completely shocked. When dinner is served, a maid brings him a big, fancy meal. He eats with excitement, really enjoying the good side of his new life. Even a bath is prepared for him. He can't stop thinking that being the young master of a count's house is pure joy. No worries, just comfort, it's like heaven. Still, there's one huge problem. He has no idea where he is. Usually, when someone goes to another world, it's from a book or game they know. So when a maid casually says his older brothers, Leo and Antonio, will come back tomorrow, he's totally confused. The maid is surprised that he seems to have forgotten his own family. As he thinks about their names, something clicks. They sound painfully familiar. Then it hits him like a lightning bolt. He's in the world of Psychedelia. That's a turn-based RPG he used to play in his very little free time. But there's a twist. In every possible story of Psychedelia, once the 5 great sins appear, wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession, the nobles and cities of the kingdom go crazy and get destroyed. The Palacio family, where he now lives, is famous in one of the game's early side missions. The oldest son, Leo Palacio, is called the King of Lust. The second son, Antonio, is known as the King of Vice. When he realizes this, he drops to his knees. He remembers this place clearly. It's the very first side quest of the game. He looks around and sees the mansion looks exactly like it did in Psychedelia. The Palacio family is meant to be one of the first noble families wiped out by the 5 great sins. And his current identity, the third son, Alon Palacio, is a minor bad guy who dies a terrible death. His face stays blank as this truth sinks in. Even though he just found out his death is certain, the only thing he thinks about is how much experience that quest gave in the game. Later that night, lying in bed, he's too scared to even close his eyes. He would honestly rather go back to his terrible office job because at least there, his life wasn't counting down. The idea that his fancy new life will end in exactly 10 years scares him more than 6 months of no pay ever could. Still, he doesn't give up. He already knows what will happen in this world, so maybe he can use that knowledge to help himself. If he can somehow change fate and stop the 5 sins from rising, he could save the kingdom and his own peaceful life. It sounds possible. After all, those sins are still just kids right now. The real problem is he has no abilities at all. How can someone with no power change destiny? 2 months later, he pulls off his first big move, though not by his own hands. His knight, Evan, saves a group of orphans from a place where humans were being experimented on. Evan reports that he left the rescued kids in the care of a girl named Yusha. The young master nods, happy that he picked Evan for the job, because the knight is capable and trustworthy. But because his face hardly ever shows emotion these days, Evan can't tell if the nod means praise or just not caring. To make it clear, the young master tries to give an awkward smile. This only makes Evan think he'll never get used to his lord's new way of acting. He remembers how Alon used to be easy to read, cheerful or sad. His feelings were always clear, but now he seems strangely blank. Even the main character thinks that taking over Alon's body may have frozen his facial expressions. Evan, still unsure, decides to take the gesture as a compliment. The main character thinks about how Evan is one of the few honest people in the corrupt world of Psychedelia, a loyal knight who never turns on those he serves. That's why he recruited him right away. Finally, Evan reminds him that the real reason he was sent to the testing facility was to save Yusha. The young master agrees. Evan says he can see why his master went so far to save the girl. With all his years as a mercenary, he can tell Yusha is no normal child. Her strength alone makes him wonder why she ever let herself be locked up in the first place. He then asks why the young master didn't bring her back to the manor, since keeping someone like her in an orphanage seems like a waste. Our main character agrees out loud, but inside he has other thoughts. He knows it might look like he's ignoring her potential, but leaving her there is actually part of a bigger plan. Yusha isn't human. In the game's original story, she makes a deal with a being from another world and later becomes the living form of wrath, one of the 5 great sins that cause countless deaths. Thanks to his actions, that dark future has been avoided. He wants her to grow up peacefully, far from anything evil. To him, this means he has successfully stopped one of the 4 remaining disasters. Of course, he can't tell Evan any of this, so he decides to be mysterious and simply says, "The time isn't right yet." Evan is curious, but he doesn't push. Every side character has their own story. After all, he promises to respect his master's wishes. The young noble tells Evan to keep this quiet and make sure the orphanage gets enough money to live comfortably. Then he hands him a letter and asks him to give it directly to Yusha. When Evan asks what the letter says, his master waves it off, saying it's just a note to see how she's doing. He says he wants to make the girl feel better after everything she went through. Evan nods, promises to deliver it soon, and rides away on his horse. Once alone, the young master wonders if his letter will really comfort her. In truth, it contains something very different. A few lines he remembers from the game. Back then, when Yusha had already become the form of wrath and was destroying the kingdom, the archbishop mentioned a strange spell that could reach a non-human like her. The line went something like, "Cast agony from the shadows with the light of the fallen's grace." He never fully understood it, but in the game, those words caught her attention for a moment before she killed the archbishop. Anyway, it wasn't that the spell didn't work, it had just come too late, and her anger swallowed her before peace could grow. Now, our main character believes that by sending those same words early, he might really change her future this time. With wrath taken care of, at least for now, he's ready to move on to the next great sin. Still, he thinks it sounds silly to try to befriend a possible monster with just one poetic line. But seeing that all these sins seem to worship some strange higher being, maybe there's something real to it. To him, they all seem like fanatics. Meanwhile, we shift to Yusha, who is reading the letter herself, and she's not happy. Evan, watching her, can feel a huge burst of mana coming from her small body. It's hard to believe. He admits she might be the strangest person he's ever met. Her face shows no emotion, her voice is calm, but her power screams the opposite. She asks Evan to confirm that the young master really wrote the letter. When he nods, she explodes with anger. Her mana flares like a storm. The force is so strong it even scares a seasoned warrior like Evan. Making mana visible like that is something only masters can do. Her rage is wild, like a jealous lover who feels ignored. Evan remembers his master's words, that it simply wasn't time yet, and blurts them out in desperation. Miraculously, that line works. Yusha goes still. She sees the phrase in the letter as a secret message meant only for her, a hidden promise she believes only her master could make. Evan stands there speechless, completely lost. Yusha, still wrapped in her strange devotion, says she understands him perfectly. Her behavior is eerily similar to a certain vampire-like guardian from another story. She is, after all, the daughter of monsters, the Scarlet Queen Yusha, destined to become wrath itself. Back at the manor, our main character feels sure he has bought himself more time to enjoy his easy life. As he falls asleep, he imagines the bright moon smiling down at him, quietly cheering him on. Before getting into bed, he puts a primrose flower on his bed, thinking it's just a cute little decoration. All he really wants is to live peacefully and in luxury. Is that really too much to ask? What he doesn't know is that in the Astria kingdom, primrose flowers are used in funeral ceremonies. They are placed on wounds or graves. It's a very bad sign. The next morning, he's in the library, buried under books that keep falling on him, as if punishing him for not being able to read. He's researching the third sin, or as he likes to call them, the landmines. The work is incredibly frustrating. Evan soon returns and reports that they have rescued another child, thanks to the young master's directions. The main character asks if the child was treated gently after being saved from an underground slave market. Evan promises she was, but before they can talk more, the library doors burst open with a loud crash, sending papers flying everywhere. The intruder is Tonio, the second son of the Palacio family. He starts making fun of his younger brother right away, asking how a fool who can't read dares to hold a book. Our main character, blank-faced as always, just stares. Tonio's insults get worse, but the young master decides it's not worth it. He plays it cool, saying, "Tonio can use the library if he wants. I'll be leaving now." Tonio, thinking he's shown who's boss, grinds his heel onto his brother's head with a smirk. Before things can go further, a knife suddenly flies through the air and sticks into the wall next to them. A new voice scolds them for being too loud. It's Leo, the oldest son. As Leo and Antonio start arguing, our main character takes the chance to quietly crawl away, completely unbothered. He remembers that in the game, the Palacio family was destroyed early on, but seeing them in person, he realizes how powerful and dangerous they really are. The two brothers are always fighting each other, battling over who will become the head of the family. Leo controls the city's underground pleasure network and is called the King of Desire. Tonio runs the largest drug ring in the region and is known as the King of Vice. Watching them fight, the young master decides there's no reason to get involved in their mess if he wants to keep his comfortable life. So with his usual blank face, he literally crawls away from the chaos while Evan calmly follows, as if this strange escape is the most normal thing in the world. As Evan fixes his young master's hair, our main character silently promises himself to live happily, even if it means staying a powerless, useless, illegitimate son. A little later, Evan mentions that the second child they rescued didn't seem like an ordinary kid either. Watching his master lazily lean back in his chair, Evan can't help but question reality. How could a man like this, who complains all the time and seems unable to do serious work, possibly know about illegal slave markets and secret human experiments all over the kingdom? Evan thinks it must be hard for his young master to stay calm around his cruel brothers, while the man himself just mutters about how tired he is. Then Evan asks why he decided to send that second rescued child to the orphanage. Of course, the young master has his reasons. He knows this boy isn't just another victim. He's different. The child comes from the Ascalian kingdom, the central nation in the United Realm. In the world of psychedelia, this boy is known as Das Malayan, the second major boss in the game. After suffering slavery and terrible abuse, he eventually becomes the living form of the sin of sloth, causing horrible destruction across the land. Many players were shocked by how cruel his story was. Even though his sin is sloth, Das was never lazy. He was known for his strong determination and a deep sense of justice, paying back both kindness and revenge many times over. That's exactly why our main character told Evan to treat Das with the greatest care and gentleness. Even now, he still shudders, remembering how nightmarish Das's battle scenes were in the game. Trying to keep up his mysterious, wise noble act, he tells Evan the same cryptic line as always: "It's not the right time yet." Evan nods, not bothered, now used to his master's weird riddles. He then asks if the letter sent to Yusha this time was about the second child. The young master says yes, but the truth is more ridiculous. Inside the letter, he's just complaining to Yusha about how his older brothers keep bullying him. It's both sad and funny. Still, he says he asked her to look after the second child, who isn't feeling well. Technically, that's true. Das really does need time to heal. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Das sits alone, trying to hide his injuries and scars. Yusha walks up to him, studying him with cold curiosity. She asks if he's broken. Then, in a chilling voice, she mentions the Black Goat organization. Das flinches at the name. Sliding into her obsessive, Yandere-like mood, Yusha tells him that even if he's damaged, he's still been chosen. She congratulates him for being recognized by the Blue Moon, which she says is their master, the title she has given to our main character. It's clear she's building an organization around him. She promises Das that if he stays loyal, he'll get his chance for revenge. Hearing this sparks something deep inside him, and his hidden magic, or maybe the power of sloth, begins to wake up. Satisfied, Yusha happily decides to write her first reply letter to their master, smiling far too brightly for someone covered in scars. Back at the manor, the young master is buried in books again, still searching for clues about the third child. Suddenly, Evan bursts into the room with scary news. The second son of the Palacio family is dead. Even though our main character knew this was supposed to happen, the suddenness still shakes him. The funeral is held right away, and to everyone's disgust, their father shows up with 2 escorts on his arms. Watching the scene, the young master can only think, even for this messed up family, that's too much. He thinks to himself that psychedelia truly is the definition of dark fantasy. As for Tonio's accidental death, something feels off. In the game, Leo had cried hysterically after killing his brother and claiming the title of heir. But here, Leo stands over the coffin, smirking, not even pretending to be sad. At least try to act sad, our main character thinks. Still, this isn't his problem. He keeps his focus on stopping the disaster tied to the 5 great sins. A year goes by. Leo takes over Tonio's criminal network and turns the chaos into a more stable, but still corrupt, business. The Palacio estate becomes quieter. During that time, Yusha and the young master keep exchanging letters, almost like pen pals. He figures keeping the connection will be useful later. Yusha writes regular updates about the orphanage and how the children are growing. He's quietly proud, especially when he sees the sponsorship list getting longer each month. Evan, happily munching on snacks, says it's strange but definitely a good sign. Then he delivers the update our main character has been waiting for. They found important information from the Intelligence Guild, an ancient text about the third child, the next landmine he must deal with. The young master almost beams with joy. Finally, he can move forward. Everything seems to be going smoothly. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the kingdom, at one of Leo's drug depots, a man named Margot and his henchmen are bragging about how generous their boss is. They say his operations now number in the hundreds, but their laughter dies quickly when chaos breaks out. One by one, the men turn on each other, screaming as if something invisible is forcing them to move against their will. The ones behind this are none other than Yusha and Das. Das uses deadly magic threads to easily wipe out the whole group. Then he turns to Yusha and asks if killing these people is really necessary. She answers coldly, asking if he feels sorry for them. He says he doesn't. After all, these lowlifes used human lives to make drugs. Yusha explains that this is a cleansing, something needed to prepare for their master's rise. With a calm, almost holy smile, she says they can't let the place stay dirty when he returns. Das nods, or at least thinks he understands. Together, they carve a glowing symbol into the ground. A burst of mana explodes outward, leaving behind a crescent-shaped mark. As they rise into the night sky, Yusha announces that all of this is for their master, the Blue Moon, and that they are his sword and shield. 2 years have passed since the letter exchange started. Evan has been chasing leads on the remaining sins without rest, and now he collapses on the grass, completely drained. A touch of his master's mana brings his energy back. Evan then shares the news. They have finally found the 5th child and safely placed them in the orphanage. For the first time in years, our main character feels real relief. Even though his face doesn't show it, he's deeply touched. He did it. He saved all 5 children before they fell into sin. To celebrate, he gives Evan cake and tea and praises his hard work in finding the sin of greed. The 3rd child had been the hardest to find, but they managed thanks to his inside knowledge from the game. Everything is finally in order. Evan asks why he doesn't look happier. The young master insists he's thrilled, but his totally blank face gives him away. We even get a close-up of his smile, which doesn't exist at all. Evan just sighs. He's used to it now. Thinking about their progress, the young master admits he never thought things would go this well. In the game, the 5 bosses turned into the great sins because of unbearable pain. Saving them before that change seemed almost impossible, but somehow he did it. When he asks about how the orphanage is doing, Evan hands him a letter saying everything is running smoothly and the children seem happier every day. The young master says that if that's true, they might not even need a new caretaker. He's surprised Yusha has handled everything so well, though it makes sense given how much she cared for the orphanage in the game's story. Reading Yusha's letter, he finds that she's written warmly about each child's progress, especially Das, and reassures him that everyone is doing fine. For the first time, a faint smile appears on his lips. He's truly glad they're growing up well. Evan asks when he plans to finally meet them in person. As always, the young master answers vaguely that the right time will come. The truth is, he has no plans to meet them anytime soon. He's scared of the power they'll one day have. For now, staying away feels safest. Still, he knows that if he wants to survive in this dark world, he needs to become stronger. The answer is magic, and luckily, his body has the potential for it. While training, Evan mentions a new group rising on the continent called the Blue Moon. The young master pretends not to know anything, but Evan explains they've been going after corrupt nobles and criminal gangs. Outwardly, he praises them, thinking it's a good thing, but deep down, he feels uneasy. He doesn't remember this group from the game. Evan jokingly warns him to be careful since the Blue Moon's next targets are probably the nobles themselves. The young master freezes, then nervously orders Evan to start sleeping in the room next to his, just in case. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Yusha holds a Blue Moon meeting. The Sin of Pride, a girl named Sol Rang, reports that she wiped out a group of slavers by cutting off all their heads. She brags about playing a guessing game with them, promising to let anyone live who could correctly name her eye color. None survived. Then Rina, the Sin of Greed, gracefully reports that all the bodies were dissolved without leaving a trace. The organization is growing, and its devotion to the Blue Moon is getting stronger. The Sin of Misophobia, Rodin, reports that he also finished things in the south, dealing with the illegal human testing grounds and turning those Avalon troublemakers into minced meat. These kids are seriously scary. Anyway, the scariest of them all, Yusha, praises them for a job well done. She talks about how everything will go according to his will, stressing that they all exist for the sake of the Great Moon. This secret organization worships the Great Moon, the Blue Moon, who just happens to be our main character. Suddenly, Das reports a problem. Yusha wonders what could be wrong when everything seems perfect under his command. These fools treat our MC like some kind of god. Das explains that the head of Avalon is the oldest son of the Palacio Count family, where their lord lives. He says he found a dangerous written order while cleaning up the south. It turns out the oldest son, Leo, is targeting our MC. Naturally, Yusha can't let this slide. She releases a fierce, murderous aura that makes the other kids shrink in fear. The letter reveals Leo's plan is to slowly poison our boy after getting rid of their father, which sends Yusha into a furious rage. Fast forward 2 years, our main character's father, Count Paled, has passed away. As before, his funeral is held almost immediately. Our MC explains that while the official cause of death is heart failure, it's clear he died from an overdose. At the funeral, Leo gets news that the Blue Moon has struck one of his facilities. Seriously, couldn't they have waited until after the funeral? Leo keeps asking if everyone was wiped out again. Our main character, just casually listening in, realizes his brother is getting more and more careful about the Blue Moon. The Count's funeral finishes without a single tear being shed. Our MC decides he doesn't want to get mixed up in this drama and quietly slips away, right as his brother shoots him a scheming glare. When Evan asks what our MC plans to do next, since it looks like that jerk of a brother is on track to become the new Count, our MC is already one step ahead. He's been packing his bags and tells Evan to do the same. The plan: run away from this mess. Evan questions whether he really means to flee. Our MC explains it's not a full escape. They're just heading downtown to lay low for a bit. When Evan asks if he means the town of Rodmill, our guy confirms it. He's had his eye on Rodmill for a while. It's a small town in the south of Palia, making it the perfect hideout. Plus, he's timed it well since Leo has been giving him some really unsettling looks. Once they arrive in Rodmill, our MC actually starts enjoying life. He whips up some delicious-looking toast while Evan just goes along with everything like it's the most normal thing ever. But 3 days later, their peaceful life is shattered. Our MC is forced to return home for his brother's funeral. He can't believe he's back so soon. According to the game, Leo wasn't supposed to die yet. The cause of death is a stab through the heart, which leaves our MC wondering who could have done such a thing. He tries to ask one of the servants about the details, but they scream in horror as if they're about to meet their end. It's not just that. All the servants are acting strange, overly apologetic, and treating him like some kind of mafia boss. He can't help but wonder what's going on with these people. As he's making his way out, Evan catches up to him and asks if he found out why the servants are acting so weird. Evan claims he did and playfully wonders if our MC was the one who made the Avalon drug organization disappear overnight. Turns out Leo was the head of that organization, and now that he's gone, it seems the whole thing vanished without a trace. We then flash back to the day our main character set off for Rodmill. Inside the carriage, Evan was curious, asking why he's heading to a small town like Rodmill instead of a busy city. Our MC explains that a city is simply not an option for him. Rodmill is his ultimate destination, the endgame, and all his plans. He shares that his mission is straightforward: save the 5 great sins from their misfortunes to stop the world from crumbling. Plus, since Rodmill isn't part of the original story and has a villa, it's the ideal spot for him. A villa is a separate estate, making it the perfect hideaway for a laid-back noble like him, where he can relax and do absolutely nothing. Honestly, I share that dream. Anyway, our MC gets serious when answering Evan's question, insisting that everything he does has a purpose. But after hearing the same old responses for a while, Evan calls him out, pointing out that he always uses those same lines when he wants to dodge a question. He tells our MC that he can't fool him anymore. Our MC is taken aback by how Evan has seen through his little lies. As their banter continues, Leo, who has been watching our MC drive away, contemplates whether he should kill him or not. According to Leo, it doesn't really matter if our MC lives or dies. He had already planned to poison him. But now that our MC has decided to leave for the border, Leo feels he has no reason to go through with it. Yet for some reason he can't explain, he still feels the urge to eliminate him. He instructs one of his henchmen, Alon, to follow the carriage. Alon, however, asks if that means he's supposed to kill the MC. This question leaves Leo baffled. Alon has never questioned him before, no matter what orders he received. He usually just follows them without a word. So for him to speak up like this feels a bit odd. Leo reminds Alon that his job is to obey him. But before he can finish, Alon lunges at him, stabbing him right through the heart. Leo, in shock, shouts out why Alon would betray him like this. But Alon simply replies that he enjoys playing war. We soon discover that Alon is actually part of the Blue Moon organization and his real name is hidden. He explains that they've been taught a creed by Blue Moon. Since the Blue Moon is essentially RMC's sword, it makes sense for them to act according to his wishes. However, if anyone dares to threaten the Great Blue Moon, RMC, they're allowed to take matters into their own hands, meaning they can eliminate the threat. Hidden reveals he's been waiting for Leo to give the order to kill their lord, and he can't believe it took 2 years for that to happen. Leo tries to argue that his subordinates won't let Hidden live, but Hidden counters that with Leo's death, the entire organization will be wiped off the continent forever. Looking at Leo's lifeless body, Hidden can't help but comment on how unfortunate this all is. If Leo hadn't tried to kill their great master, he might have lived a few more months or even years. Meanwhile, in the present, our MC is enjoying his dream life in the small town of Rodmill. He wakes up whenever he wants and shares delicious meals with Evan, living the life of a true noble. But as fate would have it, his peaceful existence is shattered when he receives a letter. The letter requests that he step up as the next head of the family. Just like that, his carefree life comes to an end a mere 4 days after it began, forcing him to return to the Palatia estate. However, things feel off. The maids and other staff are acting strangely around him. He can't help but wonder what's behind their odd behavior. Then Evan teasingly asks him when he became the shadow leader, leaving him completely confused. It dawns on him that all this fuss is because of the strange circumstances around his brother's death, which has led to his current situation. In his usual dramatic fashion, he starts sobbing, begging Evan to help him understand why he's seen as the villain in this story. Evan points out that since he stood to gain the most from the situation, it's only natural for people to suspect he had a hand in his brother's murder. Right after he left the estate, Leo was killed, and our main character had the perfect alibi to step into the role of the next count. Realizing how his plan to avoid this mess has backfired, he feels a wave of frustration. But Evan tries to lift his spirits, explaining that with the drug organization Avalon out of the picture and his brother gone, he won't have to worry about anything anymore. Evan jokingly adds that, in short, our main character is now the new shadow leader of the county who supposedly planned the assassination of a sword master. Even though Leo had a scummy reputation, he was still considered a swordmaster. Our main character starts to wonder where to even begin, since he can't think of any organization capable of taking out a key figure in the underworld so quickly. He asks Evan about the group he heard hunted other organizations. Evan wonders if he means the Blue Moon. Our main character thinks maybe the Blue Moon could be behind his brother's death and Avalon's fall. But Evan quickly clears things up, saying that according to the Information Guild, the Blue Moon isn't to blame. Instead of leaving behind bodies, the Blue Moon is known for marking the moon itself. That's just how they operate. But it's rumored that all the members of Avalon met their end with a sword through the heart. Evan can't help but tease our MC, joking that the road to hell has been opened. But putting jokes aside, our MC thinks about his game knowledge. He realizes there shouldn't be any organization called the Blue Moon, which means they can't be responsible for this mess. But if it's not them, then who could it be? As he tries to piece everything together, the scene shifts to the orphanage where Yusha is holding a meeting with the other great sins. She asks if everything went smoothly, and Reina, the sin of greed, confirms that she left no traces behind. Surang, the sin of pride, adds that there was no one left alive on her end, just corpses. Das chimes in, boasting that he took out all 486 soldiers of Avalon. His magic is quite something, like a beautiful butterfly tangled in spider webs. Then there's Rodon, the sin of misophobia, who also confirms that he cut down all the bad guys in half. Yusha praises them for their work, but she's a pretty intimidating child. There are whispers that she's actually over 1,000 years old in the novel, but who really knows? That's how Avalon, the most notorious drug organization in the world that brought doom to the Asteria Kingdom, was wiped out in just 5 days. But suddenly, Rodon mentions that he doesn't think the cleanup was perfect. When Yusha asks what he means, Rodon explains that he stumbled upon some interesting documents linked to the nobles associated with Avalon, particularly the Altia Doctum, which has deep ties. Hearing this, Yusha's magic starts to flare up. She tells the others they already know what she's about to say. It's time to wipe them out. Rodon promises to handle it quietly. Moving on, Yusha asks if the Information Guild is clean and whether they have any ties to Avalon. Reina confirms this, explaining that the guild matter is being dealt with separately from the other issue concerning the Blue Moon. Das, on the other hand, claims that all the guilds behave similarly, calling it the Hell Sword crafted by the Swordmaster. Hearing this, Ray asks if she should keep tabs on our MC's movements, to which Yusha agrees, stressing that this whole situation must not reach that person's ears. She insists she has mentioned this many times and they should all be aware of it. When she says, that person, she means our MC. Das points out that since that person's family targeted them first, the order to eliminate them wasn't given by them. Upon hearing this, Yusha starts to panic. In her opinion, all their actions must be driven by a direct order from our MC. She claims they are essentially swords, and a sword should never think for itself. She declares to the other sins that from this moment on, all members of the Blue Moon must only act on orders, and they should take this rule seriously. This makes the other sins feel a bit uneasy. Yusha adds that they must never disappoint that person, no matter what. Inwardly, Das thinks he can't quite understand any of this. For someone as powerful as Yusha to feel anxiety and restlessness simply because she might be discovered by that person seems excessive. But nevertheless, he tells Yusha that he understands. They conclude their meeting by chanting that everything is for the Great Moon, basically a fearful version of how the Shadow Garden from Eminence in Shadow wraps up their meetings. Meanwhile, back to our MC, he finds himself buried in paperwork as the new Count of Palazzo. He explains that after his brother's funeral, he faced a full month of endless duties and feels completely overwhelmed. He starts shedding some tears, complaining that he just wants to loaf around and do nothing. This fool even claims that's what it means to be a noble. Anyway, he can't help thinking that even though he had made quite a few enemies, his brother Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years from now. But with the strange circumstances around all his brother's deaths, everything shifted, and now all the family responsibilities have landed on him as the sole heir. Just then, a few ministers from the county walk in, bringing even more paperwork for him to deal with. He closes his eyes and wonders why everyone in the county suddenly seems to be working so hard. Back when his father was still the count, they would slack off and treat work like a rainy school day. He waves at them, signaling to drop the paperwork on his desk. But in the minister's eyes, he's radiating a deathly aura. They begin to worry if they've somehow angered him, with some even vowing to work even harder to avoid any consequences. He's seen as a secret mastermind who would eliminate anyone who displeases him. But having been a former workhorse himself, he isn't handling all this pressure very well. He wonders if it would be possible to get the ministers to do all the work for him. Later that night, Evan is a bit shocked to find out that our boy has reached the second tier in magic after just 2 years of self-study in poisoncraft. That means he's quite talented and not shy about showing it. The little rascal is casting spells all over the house. Normally, it takes about 4 to 5 years of teaching to reach the second tier in magic, and it often requires natural talent as well. Our protagonist agrees that his magical talent is pretty decent. Deep down though, he knows he's been practicing hard for self-defense because something just doesn't feel right. To use magic well for protection, you need perfect control over your mana, just like he's managing now. Still, he can't help wondering what good his magic is if it's only half-baked. He insists he's tried every type of magic this fantasy world offers, and at first it was thrilling. He thought that mastering magic would mean he'd have nothing to fear. But now it feels more like he's scrambling to learn magic just to save his own skin. Then the harsh truth hits him. His mana capacity is alarmingly small. Without enough mana, there's no magic, and that means trouble, maybe even death. As he sits with this problem, we learn that your natural mana capacity is like an athlete's natural body type. Some are born with amazing talent, but our main character is stuck with a tiny mana pool, and no amount of training will change that. Still, he holds on to a bit of hope. If everything else fails, there is a way to fix it. Just then, Evan interrupts his thoughts, telling him that his invitation to the ball has finally arrived, leaving our friend confused about what he's talking about. The scene shifts a few days later to the grand ball, where our main character makes his entrance in some truly majestic clothes. The outfit is impressive, but being the introvert he is, he says he's already worn out even though he just got there. This party, let's call it what it is your typical noble gathering in the southern part of the Asteria kingdom. It's basically a meet and greet for nobles. And since our MC is about to be sworn in as a count soon, he really has to show up. He gets into serious mode, thinking this is his golden chance to network with the nobles, which is crucial for his big goal of living a peaceful life. But soon enough, he realizes making those connections is going to be a lot tougher than he thought, as everyone seems to be running away from him in sheer terror. He even tries waving at them, but they literally just run. Evan, his friend, tries to cheer him up, telling him not to feel down. But our guy insists he's not upset at all, even if his face says otherwise. He tells Evan he expected this reaction and promises to try harder as he goes off on his own. However, our protagonist seems a bit clueless about what's really happening. He thinks the other nobles are looking down on him for being a low-class noble without any backing, and he's not entirely wrong. The current Palazzo household is indeed full of troublemakers, like his 2 older brothers. Picking up a wine glass, he tells himself that he didn't come to the ball without a plan and is determined to unlock the social skills. He's been secretly practicing. He starts talking out loud about the wine's special smell, trying to start a conversation. But due to a strange condition that makes it hard for him to show feelings on his face, he ends up looking really villainous, especially when he tries to smile. He tells a lady he'd love to have some bottles at home, all the while thinking his smile is perfect. But in her eyes, he looks like a demon king, and she bolts, saying she'll tell her father to prepare them right away. To the other nobles, it looks like our protagonist just forced and blackmailed the poor lady into giving him a limited edition local wine. What a mess. Evan tries to comfort him, while our protagonist insists the lady must have just been shy. Later, we find him sulking in a corner while Evan happily munches on food, teasing him about how his list of gifts has grown. It turns out the wine incident wasn't a one-time thing. Every time he tries to talk to someone, they think he's trying to blackmail them, handing him things like a pensia, citrus tea, and more. He can't shake the thought that Palazzo has become way more notorious than he ever imagined. With rumors swirling that he killed his 2 brothers, he's basically turned into a figure of fear and dread. Feeling down, he tells Evan he needs some fresh air. As he steps outside, a certain red-haired beauty catches his eye. While he's out there, he can't help wondering where it all went wrong. Suddenly, a soft voice calls out to him from behind, asking if he has a moment. He turns around, confused about where the voice came from, since he doesn't see anyone. Looking down, he finally spots a cute young girl who introduces herself as Loria, the 3rd daughter of Duke Alia. Hearing the name Alia, our MC recognizes it from the game. He explains that the Altia family was one of the 3 major shadow players in the Psychedelia game, known as the Northern Troublemakers. This realization stings a bit, since he had hoped someone normal had actually spoken to him. He also wonders why he can't recall this girl at all, had she not appeared in the game. Loria, however, is straightforward. She asks him to lend her his strength for protection, because she will face an assassination attempt soon. Loria explains she's in serious trouble and needs our protagonist's help. But when he looks at her, it's clear he's unsure. You see, Loria has been living under the protection of her father's mistress. But now that her father's health is getting worse, she fears her older sisters might try to kill her. Our main character can't help but think this situation mirrors his own past with his brothers. As he looks at her, it dawns on him that the reason he didn't recognize Loria from the game is that she must have already been dead and never appeared. Loria, looking as adorable as ever, begs for his help, saying that with his skills, he could really make a difference. But our protagonist firmly turns her down. She insists she's not coming empty-handed. If he saves her, she promises to share half of the Ultia family fortune. Still, he walks away feeling a bit of sympathy for her. Deep down, he knows he can barely manage his own magic, so it's best not to give her false hope. Even though he wants to help, he's not the all-powerful figure everyone thinks he is. As he heads into the party room, he can't shake the image of Loria's sad face, which makes him feel guilty. He wishes her luck before stepping inside. Meanwhile, Das and Ren, who have been watching from a distance, start to wonder what their next move should be since one of the Ultia family members has approached their master. Das wonders if he should report this to the Red Moon, a code name for Yusha. But Ren reassures him that everything's okay because, according to their intel, Loria is the only member of Alia not tangled up with Avalon. This means she's pretty much safe, since Ronan, the one with the sin of misophobia, has gone off to deal with the rest of her family. They've decided that the rest of the Alia household is going to be wiped out, all under the orders of the Red Moon. Ren adds that their main mission right now is to make sure their master doesn't catch wind of anything related to the Avalon situation. Meanwhile, our clueless main character wonders why everyone seems to be avoiding him. Does he have some kind of invisible barrier keeping people at bay? Just then, the red-haired woman from earlier approaches him, and it genuinely brings a smile to his face. Well, more of an inward smile, since he can't believe someone actually noticed him. He thinks maybe this time he'll actually manage to socialize. But as he turns around, he realizes she's not just any ordinary woman. She's another shadow player. Looking at her, he recalls seeing her face in the game, and it hits him that no normal person would approach him first unless they were trouble. He greets her, calling her Lady Zenonia, which surprises her. How does he know her name? Our protagonist explains that she's quite famous in her own right. In the Asteria Kingdom, there are three prominent shadow player families, the Alia in the north, the Patio in the east, and the Zenonia in the west. This stunning, curvy lady is introduced as the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Clea. She asks him if she's really that well known, and he explains that while Clea Patio runs a gang, the Zenonia family operates more like a clever crime syndicate. Just thinking about it makes him shudder. He insists that what he really needs are some solid connections to help him maintain his peaceful noble life. For the sake of that easy life he's always dreamed of, he believes he must steer clear of this curvy, stunning woman who seems like trouble. With a respectful bow, he compliments her beauty, almost as if he's trying to say goodbye, but she stops him, saying she wants to have a word with him about something. He replies that he'd love to, but there are too many eyes on them right now. Deep down, he wishes she would just leave him alone. With a smile, she tells him he's just as the rumors say, and adds that she looks forward to seeing him again, leaving him completely dumbfounded. As she walks away, he wonders what that could mean, sensing it's some kind of code, but he shakes it off. Meanwhile, Renee and Das, who have been watching from a distance, are pleased that their mission to keep our protagonist in the dark is going smoothly. However, Das points out a problem. Looking out the window where our protagonist is standing, they spot someone who has been tailing him for a while, and they quickly rush out to deal with the threat. The next day, our protagonist and Evan find themselves in a forest, with Evan asking if he's really sure this is the canyon he's been searching for. Evan notes that it's midday, the sun is shining, but the canyon is oddly dark. Our boy, however, isn't paying much attention. He's thrilled that he's finally found his true objective. As they venture inside, he jokes that if this place turns out to be empty like the others, he might actually cry. But as he looks at the symbols on the walls, he realizes this is the real deal. He explains that in the game, finding this place was a breeze. Truthfully, he admits that the only reason he traveled all the way to the south under the guise of attending the ball was to find this labyrinth right here. The labyrinth is called the Labyrinth of Whispers, and if you can crack all the riddles in its 8 rooms, you'll earn a powerful artifact as a reward. Exactly what he's after. He claims to have memorized all the routes and puzzles this labyrinth has to offer. Finally, he arrives at a massive door. As he looks at it, he confesses that seeing the labyrinth entrance in person is breathtaking. It feels so much more real than it did in the game. In the game, he went through this labyrinth countless times. Evan, on the other hand, asks how our protagonist even knew a place like this existed. Our boy, without thinking, replies that he's been here often, leaving Evan confused. Realizing he might have slipped up, our protagonist quickly says he was just kidding and suggests they head inside. Once inside, they face some monsters and giant golem hands that could easily crush them. Evan wonders if these creatures are tied to the riddles, and if our boy gets the answer wrong, those giant hands will show no mercy. But our boy, unfazed, starts solving the riddle, leaving Evan to wonder how he can stay so calm in such a dangerous spot. Evan thinks about how they've been together for 4 years now, yet he still doesn't understand him at all. Things like saving orphans, repaying random debts, helping free slaves, and delivering seemingly pointless messages. Yeah, in Evan's eyes, our boy is a total weirdo. Still, watching him solve the riddles with ease makes Evan question how this is even possible. This guy has barely left the estate, yet he seems to know everything about this labyrinth. Regardless, Evan admits that the reason he keeps following this mysterious master of his is simple: everything he does somehow leads to a good outcome. They finally make it inside, but our main character can't shake off the gruesome images from the game. He's feeling queasy, but as they step into a lavish room filled with treasures and gold, his attention is immediately drawn to a hand statue covered in multiple rings. He declares that their goal is the black ring and insists they should grab it and get out fast. Meanwhile, Evan, who's busy stuffing his pockets with gold, questions why our protagonist is so fixated on the black ring, which looks like the least valuable one there. Our hero explains that taking anything else could cause trouble later. Deep down, he realizes he's finally got his hands on the ring that holds the oath of restraint. As they start to head back, our MC feels pretty pleased with himself, thinking that snagging the ring was a breeze thanks to his gaming knowledge. But Evan suddenly gets a bad feeling and points out that the rock piles they passed while entering the canyon are actually golems, and they seem to be waking up. Evan quickly gets into battle mode, feeling anxious about their situation. To him, these golems are total unknowns, making this a nightmare. He thinks that if he can just get his young master out safely, he wouldn't mind sacrificing himself. But our protagonist steps up, telling Evan to stand down because he'll take care of the golems. As the golems prepare to attack, Evan urges him to find an escape route first. With the golems closing in, Evan shouts a warning, saying his second-tier magic won't be enough to handle them. But our MC stands tall, confidently invoking the Oath of Restraint, which activates the black ring. Suddenly, time seems to slow, and he finds himself in a different dimension. A voice introduces itself as a fragment inheriting the Great Will of Nasilla, instructing our protagonist to state the 2 restrictions he wishes to impose on himself. Our main character finds himself in a pretty intense situation. In the game, this part showed up as a choice window, but now hearing this mysterious voice and seeing a gigantic face looming in the dark cosmic expanse is a bit overwhelming. The Oath of Restraint is an absorption-type artifact, and as the name suggests, it lets the user place limits on themselves in exchange for power. However, the sheer force of the voice makes our MC tremble a bit. The voice urges him to declare his first restriction. With a hand sign, he states that he will always perform the hand signs of Babylonia when casting magic. The voice then asks what he hopes to gain from this restriction. Our boy responds that he desires the ability to bend the laws of the world just a little more. The voice grants him this power. For his second restriction, our boy explains that he will strictly chant the words of Babylonia when using magic. When the voice asks about his desire behind this restriction, he boldly claims he wants even greater power to defy the laws of the world, which momentarily surprises the mysterious entity. Our protagonist starts to worry that he might have messed something up, especially since the entity paused. He even mimicked the exact skill icon from the game just to be safe. By choosing both the hand signs and the word restrictions, he believes he can achieve the highest possible magic attack power. Thanks to all his repeated gameplay, he has memorized every combination used in the game. So this should work. Finally, the entity speaks again, confirming that his restraints have been granted. It expresses gratitude to the human who has remembered all the gestures and mysteries of the forgotten god. Our protagonist is puzzled by what the entity means, but he quickly notices that the ring is being absorbed, meaning all the restrictions were successfully applied. The entity concludes by telling our MC that it will always be watching over him as the one who will inherit its will, whatever that means. Just then, time seems to start flowing again. Right as the golems launch their attack on our MC, Evan tries to reach him, but our hero, unfazed, begins to cast his magic. He can't help but chuckle at his own spell, thinking how in the game it looked so impressive and powerful, but now, thanks to his meager mana, it's just so small. He gathers it in his hand, reflecting that no matter how hard he pushes himself, this will always be his limit. But hey, it's time to test out his new restrictions. I have to say his magic looks majestic. Maybe it's the pose. Anyway, he starts chanting, with the first word being refraction, which makes his magic begin to take shape. Then comes repulsion, causing it to swell in size, transforming into a stunning blue light of electric magic. The magic ball is massive. Using hand signs, he adds another chant for direction. And finally, he unleashes it. The way he does it is so grand, it's like how Gojo releases his hollow purple. The sheer power of our boy's magic leaves Evan in shock as the lightning obliterates all the golems, turning them to dust. In the aftermath, Evan can hardly believe his eyes, wondering what on earth just happened. He asks our protagonist if he's been hiding his power all this time, but our boy shakes his head. Evan explains that in all his 15 years as a mercenary, he's never seen anything like that. He questions if our MC is really sure that was second-tier magic, to which our boy confirms, though deep down, he's just as confused about what happened. He admits that this wasn't at all like it was in the game. In Psychedelia's turn-based battle system, magic could be enhanced each turn through hand signs or incantations. This time he boosted the chain lightning magic with all 4 incantations and hand signs for a total of 5 turns. In other words, he simply used magic settings for a large-scale lightning spell. However, because of his restraint oath, he had to use the hand signs and incantations for all his magic, meaning his spells were enhanced again and again. Even so, our protagonist felt that the second-tier magic he used was a bit over the top, and the results exceeded his expectations, which caught him off guard. Meanwhile, Evan was just relieved they made it out. As he sat down, he remarked that watching the battle was way more exhausting than actually fighting. He asked our protagonist who had created such an unpleasant canyon. After thinking for a moment, our hero realized that the Labyrinth of Whispers had a different name in the game. The map layout and strategy guide were posted on the game's community website, and it was called the Maze of Paladon. He told Evan that a guy named Paladon was the one behind it, but Evan was too worn out to even process that information. I really love this duo. Our protagonist grabbed Evan, saying they needed to head back home because he had something in mind to do once they got there. This made Evan question why his usually lazy master was suddenly so motivated today. Our main character explained that every time he picked a hand sign that matched the spell's attribute he was casting, the power increased. If he chose the right incantation, the magic properties would get enhanced, which is how the game mechanics were designed to work. The only difference was that unlike in the game, where the visuals stayed the same and only the numbers went up, in this world, the spell actually changed shape with each incantation. But he suddenly wonders if this only applies to him, especially since he's particularly skilled at controlling mana. He decides he'll need to test it once his mana has recovered. But for now, he's just relieved that everything turned out okay. As they prepare to leave on their horses, we see Ren, who has been quietly following our main character, watching the whole scene unfold. She quickly makes her way to the canyon, and upon arriving, she spots the runes on the wall and realizes she can actually read them. She explains that these are the glyphs of the Alon Empire, which essentially tell the story of the era of the forgotten outer gods. Renee's eyes catch another glyph hidden in a corner, which she translates as, "For my friend who shall be left alone from the coward Palin." As she examines the glyphs more closely, a smile spreads across her face. She shares that the one who halted the invasion of the dark creatures, standing victorious against the Alkal Kalaka that devoured the hearts of the citizens, was none other than the brilliant emperor known as Palin the Great. The reason she knows all this is that she inherited all this knowledge at birth thanks to the ancient library she received. She briefly recalls our main character mentioning that Palin was the one who built the canyon, but as usual, she misinterprets the situation. She thinks that she knew our MC was special since someone like the Bloody Queen Yusha follows him, which is a pretty big deal. Having someone like Yusha as a subordinate is something you'd only read about in history books. However, she continues to believe that our MC is actually a friend of Palin, completely misreading the glyphs he saw. Moreover, she claims that the phrase our boy used while casting magic doesn't exist anywhere in the ancient library, which only strengthens her belief that our MC is truly remarkable. Blushing, she admits that Yusha was right all along, feeling a bit embarrassed about having followed orders without question all this time. And just like that, our boy ends up with another Yandere in his harem. Kind of a strange thing to say since they're basically just kids, but I digress. Anyway, Rina spots Das arriving and immediately asks if he got any info from the fool who was tailing their great master. Das responds that the idiot is dead, and he didn't even do it. It's more like the guy's head just twisted in midair. Rina insists they need to report this back to Yusha for processing, and Das agrees. So they head out. Meanwhile, in Zenonia County, Lady Kalia is sipping her tea, thinking about how our main character is just as the rumors say. She notes his chilling, emotionless expression and those abyss-like eyes. It bothers her that he called her famous. Count Zenonia is indeed strong and well-known, but for our boy to label her as famous despite not being involved in social activities is quite intriguing. What's really going on here is that Kalia is the true mastermind, using black magic to control her father the Count, making her the real head of the family. The fact that our boy called her famous makes her think he might know something about her secret, which terrifies her since no one is aware that she's turned her father into a puppet. She recalls how our boy mentioned there are too many eyes on them, which she misinterprets as him having discovered the person she had following him. Now, that's a classic case of misunderstanding, like something out of an Eminence in Shadow scenario. Suddenly, Kalia gets a call from one of her servants who says there's a problem. She asks what's going on, and the servant insists it's better for her to see it for herself. When she heads to her room, she discovers that the person she had following our boy is dead. The servant explains that since the seal on the body didn't activate, it means he didn't spill any secrets, but Kalia quickly points out that the person who killed her man must have intentionally brought him to her room. Frustrated, she starts questioning how our boy figured out she was the one who sent this guy to tail him. And just like that, our boy gets misunderstood once again. At the grand halls of the Alta Ducal estate, the scene unfolds as Loria walks through the quiet corridors, her face heavy with disappointment and fatigue. Her mind drifts with thoughts of regret and realization. As expected, she knew he was not someone to underestimate. The distinguished one of the underworld, a man who possessed cold eyes much like her father's. He was the kind of person she must never make an enemy of. Once he had been her last lifeline, but she knew he would never accept a deal that could bring him significant losses. All her assets and power had been stripped away by her sly siblings, the eldest daughter Marian, the second son Ki, the eldest son Taman, and the second daughter Pai. With nothing left, she had survived only through her father's love and mercy. But now even that seemed uncertain. As she walked deeper into the estate, lost in despair, she whispered to herself that she no longer knew what to do. The moment she entered the estate, the maids rushed toward her in panic, their voices trembling. They cried out, calling for Lady Loria, their faces pale with fear. They told her that Lady Pine and Ki had taken their own lives. Shock spread across Loria's face, her body frozen in disbelief. Her thoughts raced. Those people would rather stab their own family, and yet they took their own lives. It didn't make any sense. Fear gripped her heart as she asked about Taman and Marianne. Soon after, she was shown a horrifying sight, both Talon and Marianne lying lifeless, their swords buried into each other's chests. Loria's body trembled as terror consumed her. Her mind screamed with confusion, wondering why and how such a tragedy had occurred. Meanwhile, outside the Altia estate, Rodon was seen leaving swiftly, a faint smirk curling on his lips as he muttered to himself, successfully eliminated. Loria's mind flashed back to Alan's earlier words, the ones that had hinted that good things would soon happen. Remembering that, she felt an icy dread run through her veins. A realization struck her. The true mastermind of the Count's household, the one who had hidden his claws and waited for the right moment to seize power, had finally made his move. This was exactly what he meant. Now she had become the only successor in the ducal family overnight. A bitter laugh escaped her lips as she wondered what kind of monstrous devil she had made a pact with, but she knew there was no going back now. Those who betrayed him had already met terrible fates. There were too many precedents. She told herself that she must walk the path she had chosen, no matter how dark it became. A sudden determination lit up her eyes. 2 months later, a grand gift arrived at Duke Alia's estate, addressed to Alon. Upon seeing it, Evan's eyes widened in surprise. It was a bottle of Cernant's wine, a rare and luxurious drink that costs thousands of gold per bottle. He was amazed, saying he had never expected to see such a treasure. When Alon read the letter accompanying it, he realized that the gift had not been sent by Duke Alia himself, but by Loria Alia. It seemed the youngest daughter had prepared it personally. He was confused, wondering why she would send it to him. The thought stung his conscience, reminding him that he hadn't been able to help her when she needed it most. He turned to the servant and asked if it was truly meant for him. The servant confirmed that the Duke herself had prepared it and ordered him to deliver it personally. That single phrase, the Duke herself, made Alan pause. Realization struck him. The youngest, Loria, had become the Duke. In the next scene, Loria was shown in her office, busy with documents. When her work was finally done, she leaned back, stretching her arms, and softly remarked how quickly 2 months had passed. After her father's funeral, he had passed away due to illness. She had officially become the Duke following the succession ceremony. She recalled how she couldn't even enter that office before. The death of her siblings had happened so suddenly, yet no one had suspected her at all. She had an alibi. She was attending the ball at the time. Back then, her secret organization had been destroyed by her siblings, leaving her utterly powerless when she returned to the mansion. Later, she came to understand how deeply he had calculated everything. He had declined her plea with indifference on the surface, but had perfectly cleaned up everything behind the scenes. She wondered just how far into the future he had planned all of this. She hadn't even informed him about her father's funeral, not wanting to trouble him. Yet he still helped her. It was clear that he had a reason. He needed Alia for some part of his grand plan. Although she had successfully merged all the subordinate organizations under Alia, it still wasn't enough to match the immense power he had behind his calm facade. That only meant one thing: he wanted something from her. Palacio, the distinguished figure of the underworld who had risen through sheer business prowess. If there was one thing she possessed that he didn't, it was her ability to manipulate the political stage from the shadows. He needed the Altia name for now. She decided to focus on what she must do. Believing that the distinguished one would contact her soon, she hoped he would appreciate her gift of gratitude. The scene shifted once more, showing Alan in his quarters as Loria's servant bowed before him, saying that he would take his leave. Alan stood still, lost in thought, still unable to process the news. The fact that Loria, who had once been threatened with death, was now the Duke, didn't sit right with him. Evan noticed his troubled expression and wondered silently what was wrong with him now. A few months go by. The narrator tells us that we are now 5 years before the original story begins. Evan enters, full of excitement, and calls out to Alon, calling him young master before quickly correcting himself to Count. Alon calmly says that the succession ceremony hasn't happened yet, but since a year has passed, it's fine to call him that. Still, he sighs quietly. He never planned to become the Count, but he's gotten used to it now, so he decides to make the most of his noble title and use it to his advantage. Evan then hands him a letter from Yusha. Alon takes it with a thoughtful hum and asks if there's any news about the killers who murdered Leo. The two of them walk into the library. Evan says nothing has been found yet. The Information Guild is still digging, so they need to give it more time. Curious, Evan asks what Alon's next goal will be, assuming that revenge isn't on his mind anymore. They sit in silence inside the grand library. Alon thinks deeply. He realizes that all the little things that differ from the game are probably butterfly effects from his own actions. Accepting that, he decides he'll just be ready for anything unexpected that might happen. Evan, watching him, says he suddenly sounds like a real Count. Alon just brushes it off. His curiosity soon shifts to the letter he just received. He wonders what Yusha wrote this time. Opening it, Alon reads. Yusha writes warmly, asking if he's been well. She says that, as always, everyone is doing okay and each of them is busy with their own hobbies. Dios's puppet shows have now reached a professional level. Sayola loves playing and learning with her friends. Rihar quietly spends her days reading and making things. Radon has taken up gardening. As Alon reads, a gentle smile spreads across his face. This monthly exchange of news has become something special and precious to him. It warms his heart more and more every time. Even though he's never seen their faces, knowing they're all growing well fills him with deep happiness. He can't help but smile. Then a sudden thought hits him. The 5 children are already grown up now. Evan notices his expression and says they're ready to go out into the world. Some even left the orphanage earlier than expected. The ones Alon once ordered to save have now reached that age. Alon realizes the 5 from the orphanage are no longer the small, fragile children they once were. They've grown. He quietly accepts that it's time to let them go. Evan seems surprised, reminding him that he put them all together because they were hurt. But Alon calmly says there's no need for that anymore. The time has come. He thinks to himself that he cared for them enough to make sure they wouldn't awaken as deadly sins, so they should be fine now. Evan agrees, noting that since they're all healthy, it's time to move forward. Alon's mind shifts to his knowledge of the game. Each boss battle had a rough outline of its setting, revealed through the game's story. Yusha has the talent of faith. Dios has the talent of the sword. Rina has the talent of studying. Sayarang has the talent of a fighter. Ruden has the talent of an apostle. If they use their talents in the right places, they will surely do well. The thought fills him with satisfaction. He calls it a perfect plan. Feeling determined, he decides to prepare a gift for each of them. He'd planned on giving gifts anyway, and now seems like the right time. Evening comes, and his work for the day finally ends. Evan stretches with relief, saying he'll step out for a bit. Alon waves him goodbye. Alone in his office, Alon smiles to himself, wondering if one day he might receive something back from them once they become successful and powerful. He hopes his letters will guide the children to step confidently into the world. Meanwhile, Yusha receives Alon's new letter. She gathers everyone and announces that orders have arrived. This time, the message was sent to each of them individually. The group falls silent, reading their letters with serious expressions. Seal Rang can barely contain her excitement. Her eyes sparkle as she opens her letter. This marks the beginning of another chapter. Isha finishes reading the letter from Alon and excitedly tells everyone that new orders have come, this time delivered to each of them personally. Everyone is surprised. But before anything else, Yusa suggests they should read the previous letter too, since the new instruction seems to need a lot of attention. Xiang speaks cutely, saying only Yusa was allowed to read the earlier letters. Yusa explains that since Alon gave each of them a personal order, it means he's decided it's time for everyone to see the contents themselves. Alon's letter makes Seal Rang and the other Sins react like curious kittens. Seal Rang clumsily repeats the first line. How have you been lately? It seems you have many talented friends. If you need anything, let me know. Renee comments that it sounds like ordinary small talk, but Yusa smiles. She understands that Alon kept the opening simple on purpose. After the greeting, this is the first real order he's given. He has named the targets, assigned missions, and told them to report the results afterward. It was during this time that he trusted the Blue Moon to her. As everyone can see, he personally chose each of them, and all the Sins are excited to meet him. Dees nods, saying it makes sense. This prevents information from leaking. She remembers her first order and smiles, recalling how firmly she was told to understand the instructions and complete the mission without fail. Dees then wonders aloud if it would be better to visit Alon in person or contact him through magic. Raiden agrees that if leaks are the problem, letters seem unusual. Yusa's expression sharpens. She reminds them their duty is simply to follow Alon's orders. She grips the letter tightly, and Dee sighs at her strong resolve. Dee finally says they should read the orders properly. Moments later, she explains that Alon has ordered her to go to Caliban, the nation of knights. Seal Rang scoffs, calling it a desert colony she doesn't like. Raiden says his destination is Rexy, the entertainment city. Renee is ordered to go to Latina, the mage city. Finally, Yusha, the female lead of the whole story, looks stunning as always when she speaks. She says she's assigned to the Holy Kingdom of Risa. Everything they need to do is clearly written. DEA says she doesn't understand why, but Alon has ordered her to become a knight. It feels unusual. Shang adds that Alon also told her not to worry because the support will continue. Reina mentions that he revealed the locations of their gifts too. Raiden calmly says they'll understand everything once they reach their destination. Yusa gathers everyone and repeats the final rule Alon gave. They must never mention the name Blue Moon. Everyone agrees and prepares to leave. The next day, all the members gather and set out to carry out Alon's orders. 3 months later, in his office, Alon sighs. As expected, there's no big change in the world of magic. He keeps reading advanced magical texts to improve his skills and mutters that he'll have to experiment on his own, as ridiculous as that sounds. Suddenly, he looks at his knight, Yuan, and asks what he's doing. Alon then remembers something and asks about the investigation into Leo's murder. Yuan replies that the Information Guild still hasn't found anything. Alon is surprised for a moment and asks if there's anything else to report. Then he whispers to himself that the butterfly effect from saving the 5 deadly sins has already gone out of control. Even Lyra, who was never supposed to appear in the story, has become the Duke of Alia. The thought stresses him. She's growing her power and influence at a scary pace in the underworld. Alon lets out a tired chuckle and tells Yuan they should stop investigating the incident completely. It's dull work, and he already has too many duties piling up. Yuan looks at him with surprise. Alon explains that the whole situation is clearly the result of his own lack of knowledge. In a place like this, almost nothing escapes the Information Guild. He feels uneasy about it. If he tries to uncover things he shouldn't, the consequences could be much worse. He mutters that if an unexpected problem leads straight to death, then the investigation is pointless. In the end, organizations like that won't harm him as long as he doesn't interfere with their affairs. He tells himself and Yuan that there's no reason for any secret group to target him unless he goes after them first. That's why he sees no point in continuing the search into Leo's death. Yuan nods and agrees to tell the guild to stop. Then he suddenly remembers something. Oh, right. There's other news, he says. Apparently, Dees has been appointed as a knight in Caliban recently. Alon looks up in surprise. Really? Good for her. 3 months later, Yuan enters with snacks. Count, something else, he says. Dees has created an entire knight order. Alon straightens up. A knight order. Then she must be at least expert level or higher. Could she already be at the level of a sword master? Yuan replies that Dees has indeed reached the level of sword expert. Alon thinks quietly, noting it hasn't been long since she was first appointed. Students across the continent are now talking about it, saying the world will see a 5th Master Knight within 10 years. Alon raises an eyebrow. Dees, the future Master Knight. You mean the one they call the Sword of Caliban? Yuan chuckles. Yes, she's incredibly talented. Caliban must be in an uproar because of her. She keeps gaining more fame and followers with her swordsmanship. Alon silently admires her progress. 6 months later, almost a full year has passed since the 5 deadly sins left the orphanage. Alon has slowly gotten used to his duties as Count. Yuan rushes in with news again. Count, something very recent just came in. Alon asks what it is. Yuan replies, Das has officially become the Sword of Caliban. Alon freezes. That means one thing. She has become the 5th Master Knight. He says calmly that only a sword master can become a Master Knight. He explains that the Sword Master of Fitzidalia is a superhuman who has gone beyond the Aura Blade and unlocked a special ability called Deviation. He looks at Yuan and asks if he's really saying that Dees has become a sword master. Yuan interrupts and clarifies that she's about to reach that level. She hasn't created her deviation yet, but the nation has given her the title of Master Knight anyway. Not only did she defeat the 4th sword in a duel, but Caliban also lost one of their Master Knights to the Northern Barbarians. Alon thinks for a moment and admits the two sides have been at war for over 10 years. Yuan continues, explaining that learning to sense and control mana takes around 5 years, while creating a deviation usually takes decades. The first sword, Reincarnated, was 32 when he became the youngest Master Knight in history. He had been using a sword since the age of 5 and was unmatched. Even with that talent, it took Reincarnated over 20 years to reach that level. Yet now, a child who once knew nothing about swords, Dees, is becoming a Master Knight. Alon's eyes widen. So if she's only waiting for her deviation, does that mean she has already passed Reincarnated? She might become a sword master soon. A small smile appears on his face. Maybe I can benefit from her sooner than I thought. Yuan quietly notes his reaction. Alon looks at the letter with surprise and murmurs that maybe he can't do anything more, but Yuan insists he shouldn't blame himself. Alon holds the letter again and explains that he he only ever receives letters from Yusha. Even after she left for the Holy Kingdom, she kept sending them regularly. Every letter contains news about the 5 deadly sins she grew up with. They seem to stay in close contact. He sighs, saying that even though none of them have ever seen his face, they could have at least thanked him for the gifts. He pauses, then lightly slaps his cheeks and corrects himself. He's already grateful that they didn't destroy the whole kingdom after awakening as the 5 deadly sins. Alon whispers that as long as they're living well, he's truly happy. The scene shifts to Caliban, the central area of Kriam. Caliban's central district, where high-ranked nobles live, holds the grand mansion of the famous Sor Scaplift Knight Order. Inside, countless knights train with their swords. At the top of a hill stands Dees, now in full knight uniform. He looks strong, calm, and strikingly handsome. His title echoes across Caliban. Dees Mark Lane, captain of the Sor Scaplift Knight Order, youngest master knight in history. A girl suddenly waves at him with joy. Brother Dees. Dees smiles back. He looks much older and more composed than in his childhood. He smirks softly, thinking that even after a full year, the memories still embarrass him. He remembers the day he lost everything to the black corruption, and how his sister fell into darkness. Dees had been filled with uncontrollable rage trying to protect her. His hatred dragged him down over and over, nearly landing him in prison. He had completely fallen into darkness. The fact that the Great Moon saved his life wasn't the only reason. He had sworn loyalty out of desperation, believing it was the only path left. He thinks of Yosha's voice and reminds himself of the promise he made to take revenge with his own hands. Working under Blue Moon, he faced many dangerous missions. He never complained, never hesitated. Each assignment became a stepping stone toward facing the dark forces. After several years, he finally got his first personal order. When he opened the last letter, he was confused. The order was different from anything Blue Moon had given before. It led him to a small inn in southern Caliban, where he was told to pick up a gift. At first, he wasn't excited. Gifts meant nothing to someone who had lost everything. But when he arrived, Dees instantly understood what his master Alon had been trying to give him. The gift was his sister, alive, safe, and waiting for him. His eyes trembled with disbelief as he read the final line of the letter. The gift from the Great Moon is your family, the one you thought you lost forever. Dees broke down. Tears flowed uncontrollably as he ran forward and held her with shaking arms. His sister stared at him in shock, unable to believe what she was seeing. To Dees, she was more precious than his own life. The brother hugged his sister tightly, his voice shaking as he tried to speak through the tears. He said that the sister he believed was dead was still alive. Overcome with pain and relief, he looked at her and asked what happened after he lost her. Styla also cried, holding her brother's arm and offering a faint, comforting smile. A little later, they sat together with tea. When she had calmed down, she began to explain. After those people dragged her away, she was trapped in darkness for a long time. The memories came back vividly. She described being locked in a pitch-black cage, waiting for the moment she'd be taken out to be killed. When her turn finally came, someone terrifyingly strong appeared. That person grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the light, helping her escape and survive. Years later, when she was almost sold to a slave merchant, another powerful figure protected her again. A blade cut through the attackers, saving her a second time. That person was Alon's knight, Yuan, who rescued Styla, Dana's sister. Back in the present, Styla explains that after those events, she received precious medicine from a sponsor. She confidently repeats the words while holding Alon's letter. She explains that the letter was given to her directly and that Alon continued to send medicine and support without fail. The name on the letter was Alon Palestonio, and the message said Alon had sent everything specifically for Styla. She adds that Alon had instructed Yuan to deliver it personally. In that moment, Dees understood that the Great Moon had been acting for her sake too. He already knew how precious she was to him, and she cheerfully says that the great sponsor helped her more than she can ever say. She feels deeply grateful. Alon had supported them through his knight Yuan because he wanted to keep his true identity hidden. Dees, however, is stunned. Shock spreads across his face as he whispers that the Great Moon had been protecting her under his own name. He can't understand how the Great Moon even knew about their situation. He says he never spoke about his family to anyone. Only Yosha had noticed the black mark that once targeted him. He grows serious, gripping his shoulders, and asks himself how the Great Moon knew everything. Everyone sees the Great Moon as the unmatched genius behind countless stories, someone who seems aware of every hidden truth. Memories flash in Deez's mind, moments connected to Yusa. Confusion and disbelief pull at him like threads snapping into one clear picture. Everything suddenly makes sense. He struggles to understand the anxiety Yusa always showed when speaking about the Great Moon, the nervousness in her voice, and her constant reminder that a sword must never act without its master. Darkness washes through his thoughts as he realizes the foolish one was himself, but a bit of hope stays. He remembers words he once heard. The Great Moon already knew everything, and had been leaving hints for the child forced to survive alone. His body trembles, his voice shaking as this truth finally hits him. Styla pulls him out of his spiraling thoughts and asks why he looks so stunned. Inside, Dees understands that his own sword dared to act alone, yet the Great Moon chose to be merciful. The narrator's view widens, showing how the Great Moon Alon has been guiding Dees's life like a carefully planned strategy, almost like controlling a puppet. Dees whispers that he spent all those years filled with hatred and revenge against the Dark Ones, never realizing the truth. He looks at his sister. Her cheerful face carries the brightness of someone who made it through a long, terrifying darkness. She survived, saved by the Great Moon, and their family was protected. To him, that survival feels like a gift beyond measure. His thoughts twist again as Yusa's words echo in his mind. She always told him that one day he'd understand why she followed the man who was truly terrifying, the Great Moon. Dees realizes she was never a fanatic, nor someone clinging to blind trust. She earned her place in Caliban and became a knight by her own will. And yet she prayed to Alon as if he were a god. Now Dees finally understands why. Determination tightens his face. He declares that his mission is to reach the top of Caliban, to stand as a master knight, and to create his own knight order made of the finest swordsmen devoted to the Great Moon. He also understands why Yusa always said Alon was her god and lifesaver. She feels nothing but total loyalty. Fueled by this decision, Dees throws himself into mastering the sword and building his knight order. Their rise begins to take shape. Some time later, Danu stands on a balcony. A tall knight approaches and tells him the time has come. Dees walks forward and looks down at the assembled knight order. He announces that this expedition will be the first stepping stone for the solar skeletons. Hardship means nothing to him. He grips his mesmerizing, terrifying sword and declares he awaits the day he can offer his thanks to the Great Moon, along with a repayment that will truly satisfy him. His eyes glow with dark determination, his loyalty to the genius of their age unwavering. He vows to prove himself under the moon. The solar skeleton knights then set off on an expedition against the barbarians. Dina sits outside quietly, thinking the place feels peaceful, maybe because all his subordinates have grown into capable warriors. Meanwhile, Alon looks at his book and mutters that everyone has flown away from him, and he doesn't want any more information for now. His life feels more and more chaotic, but he reminds himself to focus. He jokes about needing to stop writing in cursive and promises to write more clearly. After returning from the labyrinth, he shifts his attention to studying the phrases he came across. Alon chuckles quietly, glad that his reports are finally done. Leaning back, he goes over the ideas he's been analyzing, reinforcement of magical imprint and the behavior of refraction within spells. He notes that refraction strengthens the flaws inside a finished spell, letting its energy spread outward, while repulsion twists the structure and changes how a fired spell moves. The whole thing still amazes him. With the universe law in his hands, the ability to bend the rules that run reality, he can push magic past its normal limits. From what he's seen, blue light boosts parallel magic, like electric attacks. He develops a theory that lines of refraction allow piercing, which creates a critical hit on impact. When he hit the golem earlier, the huge creature was wiped out instantly, completely vaporized despite its size and strength. For him, the rule always matters, and not a single phrase in a spell can be wrong. But with his current mana, he can only use one spell of that size per day. He feels heavy with tiredness. It took a long time to understand even this much. He gets serious, thinking about the world's limits. The hand signs and phrases of Babylonia were lost long ago, with no record left. Nothing exists in this world's written history, so he's forced to research alone and rebuild the missing pieces from scratch. Even so, he finds himself oddly enjoying the challenge, even though he only learned magic for self-protection. He places his fingers together, preparing the spell he's been working on for 2 months. A crackling purple light appears in front of him. Alon describes the result out loud, removing the focal point of the manifestation forces an imbalance that creates lightning. A small sphere of purple lightning forms. Alon calls it a weak and limited form, just a fluctuation spell. But the moment he finishes the chant, a wave of thunder ripples out, completing the structure. He chants again, compression. The condensed magic cannon tightens as the phrases break down and reshape. At the last instant, he finishes the final hand sign, triggering the spell's purpose. A violent thunder cannon blasts upward into the sky. Massive energy floods the area, shaking the ground as bright blue lightning spreads across the field like a roaring tide. Alon stands frozen, unable to believe the force that was released. The order of the spell phrases mattered more than anything. When he had tried using breakdown first, the spell failed instantly. But now, a voice echoes behind him. Impossible. Alon turns sharply. Shock stiffens his face when he sees who's standing there. Kalia, the red-haired woman, villain of her kingdom, murderer of her father, and the one who always wanted to turn Alon into her puppet, stands with her butler. Her eyes are locked on the last flickers of lightning in the air. The butler's eyes go wide. Origin magic. Using origin magic means he stands at the level of a 7th circle mage. Alon stiffens again, stunned by the term, origin circle. He's never heard his abilities described like that. Yet the truth is clear. Someone just named what he's become. Alon's expression twists with disbelief as he watches the two of them stare at him with those ridiculous, exaggerated faces. He wonders how they can look so foolish right now. Their reactions remind him of his academy days, and his thoughts drift back to a memory of his professor. Back in Clyburn, the nation of knights, he once got advice from that professor. The man had explained that you can only establish an order after being recognized by the king, and Alon had only wanted to become a mage to defend himself. He wanted strength for protection, for himself and those he cared about. Yet his professor never took him seriously. Instead, the men treated him like a pet, always praising him and patting his head with the flat of his sword. He would call Alon talented, claiming him as his own student, and beg him not to leave the country because he thought Alon was precious. The narrator even showed how fondly the professor looked at him. But Alon was always annoyed by those assumptions. His magic skills didn't come from the professor. None of it was inspired or created by that man. Every spell, every theory, every improvement, Alon achieved them all through his own research. Lady Zenonia, or rather Zenonia Kalia, who had been secretly ruling Zenonia County by turning her father into a puppet, came to Count Palacio's estate for two main reasons. First, she wanted to understand the intentions of Alon, now Count Palacio. Even though he held information that could seriously hurt Zenonia County, he hadn't used it. The relationship between the two counties wasn't exactly bad, but she knew the Count's true nature was similar to hers, a kindred spirit. In other words, she could tell Alon wasn't the type to use such powerful cards out of silly feelings or misplaced kindness. She came to find out his real plans. The second reason was to measure the strength of the organization that Count Palacio was rumored to control. Kalia knew that just meeting the Count wouldn't show the full reach of the shadowy group he commanded, but she had a way to glimpse its edges. She brought along a wizard named Biankyle. He had once proposed a new theory on forgotten-era magic at the Magic Tower and earned great praise. But he was kicked out later because his magical experiments were far too cruel. Still, even after being expelled, his rank was 5th tier. He was strong enough to wipe out a whole battalion of soldiers by himself. Kalia had made a deal with him. She would help with his experiments, and he would assist her. She figured that if a wizard like Biankyle, who specialized in detection magic and was close to the 5th tier, was there, he could easily judge the level of the people protecting Count Palacio. While the nature of one's guards doesn't reveal everything, seeing the level of the Count's protectors could give hints about the organization's inner workings. That was her reason for bringing him. In the reception room of the Count's estate, Lady Kalia subtly glances at Biankyle, who still hasn't fully closed his mouth and looks anxious. She's inwardly surprised. As far as she knew, he wasn't someone who would normally show such a foolish face in front of others. Biankyle was always arrogant and never spoke politely to anyone, not even to her who supported him. But now, his expression is very unusual. His face is still marked by shock, and she can even see flickers of fear, something she's never seen in him before. Kalia feels a mix of curiosity and unease. She thinks to herself, if he's reacting like this, could it really be that the magic we saw was an origin spell? Her thought is quick as she refocuses on the moment and meets Alon's eyes. His gaze is the same as before, cold, like he sees no value in the situation. He asks, "What brings you to the county?" Kalia breaks the silence first. "My apologies, Count Palacio. I've been rude." Even though she's still Lady Zenonia on the surface, she respectfully addresses him and says sorry for walking into the training grounds and for the sudden visit. She adds, "I've been wanting to meet you so much." But he cuts her off, saying, "No need to blame yourself. But let me make one thing clear. What I used wasn't origin. It seems the wizard you brought along misunderstood." He adds, "My magic skills aren't anything special. If I had to rank them, they'd be around the 2nd tier, and the mage beside you must have noticed that magic has no real effect." Naturally, Kalia doesn't believe Alon's words. Even though she's not an expert in magic, she can easily tell the magic he showed was anything but ordinary. She glances back at Biankyle and is even more surprised. His expression is worse than before. Still, despite his sour face, he seems to have understood the hidden message in Alon's words, a warning to stay quiet about what they saw. Biankyle forces out, "It seems I was mistaken." Kalia is shocked again, hearing him speak politely for the first time in 5 years. He usually speaks casually. Alon sighs, "Yes, you seem quite skilled, so you've probably already noticed, but that magic is useless in real terms. Now then, since the misunderstanding is cleared up, what brings you here?" Without waiting, he moves the conversation forward. Kalia quickly collects herself and says, "It wasn't anything big. I just happened to be nearby on some business and thought of you, so I stopped by." Alon asks, "Is that so?" She says yes. After thinking for a moment, Alon says, "Sadly, I'm very busy and can't talk long." She prepares to leave, saying, "That's fine. I just wanted to pay my respects." But Alon speaks with a blank face, "If you need someone to talk to, maybe visit the Duke of Alia. I think you two would get along well." Lady Zenonia smiles politely and says, "If you suggest it, I'll consider visiting the Duke." However, Her mouth feels dry. As Lady Zenonia's carriage fades into the distance, Evan asks, "Why would Lady Zenonia from that infamous family in the West visit you?" Alon answers, "How should I know?" Evan looks puzzled, but Alon truly has nothing more to say. He can't guess why Kalia came either. He thinks to himself, "It's annoying that I showed her my magic. Let's just hope rumors about me using origin don't spread." In this world, rumors hold more power than you might think. If a rumor spreads that Alon can use origin, a spell only the greatest wizards can cast, it might seem helpful at first, but it would actually be a big headache. In this dark fantasy world, there are plenty of crazy people who love to pick fights with anyone strong. He thinks there's no way Lady Zenonia would actually visit the Duke. The reason he mentioned the Duke of Alia was more about sending a message. He has no interest in getting involved with her. With that, Alon stops thinking about Kalia. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Kalia asks, "Was the magic Count Palacio used really origin?" Unlike his usual quick answers, Bianca stays silent. Just as Kalia is about to speak again, Bianca finally says, "It wasn't origin." "Not origin, then what was that display?" Kalia asks, clearly not understanding. Bianca trembles with fear and begins to explain. Origin is the end goal of all wizards, a kind of canvas. It's a canvas given only to those who have made magic into a truth, where they can draw their own special laws. Magic with its own unique arrangements and manifestation formulas, painted onto a canvas that never changes. That's what we call origin. He swallows and goes on. Count Palacio's magic was different. It wasn't drawing on a canvas. To be more exact, his magic was like tearing the canvas apart. In other words, he was twisting truths that should be unchangeable. He adds, "I only saw it for a split second because I was using the observation eye at your request, but I saw it clearly. Lightning that should have stopped was fixed, twisting the laws to break the spell that had already been cast, yet still making it work perfectly. It was an unbelievable miracle." He stops abruptly. The image of Count Palacio from earlier flashes in his mind, the moment he showed that incredible magic. His eyes had revealed a talent that could only be gained upon reaching the 6th tier, even if learned later in life. A talent that Bianca had only barely glimpsed after reaching the peak of the 5th tier because of his own hidden gift, eyes that can see the world itself. He saw a pair of jet black and red eyes, with 2 crimson rings around the pupils. Those eyes had appeared when the Count used his magic. Recalling this, Bianca can't hide the fear in his own eyes. If it's what he thinks, the Count tapped into the power of a forgotten ancient god when he used that magic. But Bianca stops his own thoughts, even using magic to force himself to stop thinking. Having studied ancient knowledge, he knows how dangerous it is to try to figure out the truth behind such things by thinking further. He adds, "Let me give you one piece of advice. Never make an enemy of him. Do not go against Count Palacio. That's all I can say." With that, Bianca falls silent. Lady Zenonia stays silent too. Kalia naturally remembers Alon's blank face and his calm gaze as he looked at her. Without realizing it, she lets out a self-mocking smile. Through Bianca's words, she's realized something. There was never any point in trying to understand Count Palacio's intentions. And she's also realized that she's already nothing more than a pawn on his chessboard. About 5 months later, 2 years have passed since the children were sent off on their own paths. In his office, Alon asks calmly, "Any new information? Maybe news about that kid?" Evan shakes his head. "Nothing about the children, Count, but there's something else." Alon glances up, uninterested at first. Evan continues with news that hits like lightning. Zenonia County and the Altia Duchy have formed an alliance. Alon freezes. "What the hell did you just say?" "The 2 pillars of the underworld have joined forces." Evan confirms. On the surface it looks harmless, but in the underworld, the alliance is real. Alon drags a hand down his face in pure frustration. He thinks to himself, "I went through all that trouble raising those little sinners, and now the world gives me a shadow alliance instead. Is the Astria kingdom going to collapse next?" Exhaustion washes over him. A creeping fear follows. He says, "No way she didn't. Kalia didn't actually take my words seriously that day, right?" He remembers his cold suggestion, "Visit Duke Alia." He certainly didn't mean form an alliance with him. He slaps his forehead. "Come on, it has to be temporary. With Kalia's personality, cold, arrogant, hostile, it's impossible, but I should prepare." He picks up his pen to write a letter. "Kalia, if I came off blunt, if I sounded cold, I wasn't trying to insult you." He stares at the line. This doesn't sound like an excuse at all. Still, he folds the letter and hands it to Evan. "I'm leaving this to you." Evan nods. "I'll deliver the message to Lady Zenonia through the Machinery Guild. I'll keep searching for the children too." Alon sinks back, looking through several reports, and mutters to himself, "I wonder what Randon and Seol Rang are doing now." Even Yusha. His eyes land on a blood-stained letter the 2 sent after reaching their destination. He says, "Seol Rang wouldn't have died, right?" The thought is dark, but it slips out. He reads on. "If they followed the instructions and found the gift, they should have gotten their warrior symbol, maybe even escaped Baba Yaga by accident." Alon checks a note describing the ability of the gold mana beast's hand glove, the treasure he gave Siren. That girl got something valuable. She wasn't born with the sin of pride. She could have become a strong warrior instead of a fallen sinner. He sighs, thinking it was right there in the item description. If I had told her about the treasure's hidden value, she could have sold it or used it for funding. With her talent, she could have made a living anywhere. His gaze drifts toward the balcony and the wide horizon beyond. He murmurs, after all, this land is a place where anyone can take the world through strength. Night falls over the desert colony, quiet and shimmering. Deep inside a hidden cave, Seol Rang stretches her arms with a tired yawn and walks forward, waving her hand. She murmurs happily, at last, the ordeal is finally over. She lifts the golden hand glove, the treasure that Alon, the Great Moon, gave her. Oh, Great Moon, thank you, she whispers, eyes sparkling. This gift is incredible. Holding the glove with love, she thinks of the pale gold kitten-like spirit that appeared earlier. She says, I always believed the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was just some random charm. But what I heard as a child wasn't a fairy tale at all. Memories come back. Her mother's gentle voice, the warmth of their old home, her tribe's forgotten pride. Our people are descendants of the Golden Mane tribe. Her mother once told her, kings of all beastkin. The essence of the Golden Mane tribe is a high relic passed down for hundreds of years. It gives us power and divine authority. Back in the present, Seol Rang holds her breath. She found that very essence inside this desert cave. The moment she put on the golden glove, pain shot through her whole body. So real, so overwhelming. She faced trial after trial inside her own mind. Each challenge tore at her thoughts, but she pushed through. Looking at her hand, she whispers, one day I nearly died as a test subject, yet the Great Moon saved my life. The memory stings her heart. Abandoned orphan, treated as nothing. But Alon changed her fate. Her voice trembles with feeling. He gave me the power to take revenge on the Black Dragon, the monster who killed my parents. She tightens her fist. A golden aura bursts from her palm, spreading across the cave like sunlight breaking through darkness. I must repay the Great Moon's kindness. Energy surges wildly from her body, golden essence blooming outward with enough force to shake dust from the walls. She stares at her glowing hand in amazement. This gift was never meant to make me an ordinary gladiator. Not at all. Testing the glove's strength, she feels the awakened lineage roaring in her blood. All I have to do is become the strongest gladiator alive, gather the scattered Golden Mane relics, and restore our tribe's glory. Golden light erupts again, brighter, fiercer, unstoppable. Raising her hand high, she declares with total resolve, I will slay the Black Dragon. A moment later, she steps out of the cave and looks up at the beautiful moon. With confidence, she says, all of this is for my savior. Let us begin. The Golden Mane who commands the greatest of all beast kind. Hello everyone, this is Rayo Recaps. The kings among their race will rise again under the blue moon after 500 years. Alon looked at the papers in front of him. A small detail pulled a vague memory to the surface. Before the thought could settle, Evan said, the Information Guild got news about the children. I wanted to tell you back at the training ground, but I forgot. Alon put the documents down and asked calmly, all right, what is it? Evan went on. Seol Rang has been doing very well in the colony. She even earned the golden flesh from the allied group. Alon tensed. Golden flesh? Where did I hear that? I can't remember. He let out a light breath and said, still, I'm glad she's doing fine. Evan nodded. Right. In that land, strength decides everything. Alon then asked, what about Radon? I haven't heard from him since he said he was learning how to work in Rexus. He said he was sent there. Evan adjusted the sword on his waist. There is information on him, but they are still checking if it's true. Alon looked at him. I see. By the way, Evan, aren't you supposed to be busy? Evan froze, confusion spreading across his face like a broken machine. My lord, why are you looking at me like that all of a sudden? I did everything you told me. His voice shook. Alon smiled. You need to get ready. It takes at least a month to reach the magic tower. Evan's eyes widened in disbelief. What? The magic tower? I've never even heard about that. Shock hit him like thunder. Alon answered casually. Oh, did I not mention it before? Evan let out a breath. I'm used to it. But still, a month. It should only take a week to reach the green magic tower. Alon said, we're going to the blue magic tower. Evan blinked. Ah, that's near Labyrinth City, so it's quite far. He straightened up. I will start preparing immediately, my lord. Alon nodded. Sometime later, Alon collapsed onto the sofa and slumped like an old man. Exhaustion made him lazy and drained. He said, a month. In a carriage. Just thinking about it makes me tired again. He muttered, but what else can I do? The item that can support my small, precious mana hole is there. His gaze dropped as a faint memory surfaced. A massive city slowly appeared in his mind, just as it had in the game. Alon continued, even though countless players visited the labyrinth, no one ever reached the end. I only reached the 115th floor because I used a cheat code. Those devs were insane. There were even more floors below that. The item I need is on the 151st floor. Because of that, the job of official magic appraiser has become so popular that it guarantees a stable life. His thoughts drifted to Ren. Her calm eyes, her knowledge, her talent with stones and potions. He said, she'll be taking the appraiser exam soon. With her talent and sense for magical items, she should pass easily. But then reality slid back in. Alon frowned a little. Maybe I gave Renee Rene too small a gift compared to the others. He leaned back and added quietly, all it does is suppress equipment items. If that gift wasn't enough, I should send her more help. His thoughts returned to their destination, Labyrinth City, Labyrinthia, a city ruled by no one. A place of explorers, machines, and endless chances. Beyond the busy streets and countless shops in the southern district stood a hidden appraisal shop known as Marita. It was quiet, but its name had spread among nobles and A-rank explorers because of its rare, specialized service. The scene shifted inside Marita. A man stood frozen, stunned by what he had just seen. A voice echoed from deeper inside the shop. The appraisal is done, my lord, the man gasped. Only then did the truth settle. The masked girl standing before him was Rene. She had hidden who she was perfectly. She held an object between her hands and said, this device lights a flame with mana. She showed it with quiet confidence. The lord nodded. Thank you, as always. Let me see. He carefully looked at the lamp in his hand and murmured, it's a relic that can be imprinted. What is the imprinted ability? Ren answered with calm certainty. A small amount of mana will keep the flame burning for at least an hour. The lord smiled. Its efficiency has improved a lot. Very good. He truly liked Rena's care and intelligence. She replied, thank you, as always. Quiet filled the shop. Rana took off her mask. Her face softened for a moment, until her eyes moved to another item on the table. She picked it up gently. This item can also be imprinted, she said. In fact, this shop had become famous because of its amazing imprinted abilities, things seen nowhere else. Inside the shop, a mystical item sat on a stand. Alon's voice echoed in Ren's memory. A gift from the Great Moon. An item sent directly by him. Ren stepped closer. It looked like an eye-shaped device glowing faintly, with blue flames swirling behind layers of sealed energy. She smiled, excitement growing inside her. She whispered, when the Great Moon told me to become an oppressor, I didn't understand the reason. But thinking of Alon made the meaning clearer. His true identity, a friend of Palin from the forgotten era of the Outer Gods. Everything he had done was meant to eliminate the black things. When she had read Alon's letter telling her to go to Labyrinth City and become a magic oppressor, she couldn't connect the order to the goal. But later, she understood. Alon wanted influence inside the Labyrinth Empire, a base strong enough to reach the magic tower. Even so, right now, she wondered aloud, what does becoming an oppressor have to do with killing the black things? She entered the appraisal room fully and whispered. The eye of the stalker repeatedly identifies items below a certain mana level to help with oppression. It was dangerous, even deadly. Red demonic chains wrapped around it, and a dark feeling seeped from the relic. It was nothing like normal magical wisdom. Rene reached forward and touched the chains. This substance, she said, it doesn't exist in any library. The device shook. Energy burst out wildly, and the seals shattered. A flash of blue light filled the room as the eye of the stalker woke up completely. Mana swirled around her like a living storm. Ren leaned closer, determination in her eyes. To gain the strength to fight the black things, I must wake this item myself for the Great Moon. She said, I have 252 more sacrifices left before it fully awakens. In exchange for raising the relic stats, it took something from each sacrifice, changing the eye instantly. It only reacted to specific high-tier relics. If the wrong item was sacrificed, the entire stack disappeared. She understood clearly. The relic needed high-tier offerings, many of them, to fully rise. And when it finally awakened, it would become a weapon trusted by Alon, the Great Moon. Ren felt a determined thrill. She wanted to wake it completely. She murmured, correctly appraising all relics and picking the right high-tier sacrifices for imprinting. This is something only I can do. She lifted the divine eye-shaped relic in her hands. I was born with the Library of Eternity. Everything is for killing the Black Wolf. Her voice deepened with resolve. All is according to the will of the Great Moon. 3 weeks later, at the Blue Magic Tower, the master of the tower was not there. A small young girl stood in the entry hall. She looked cute, but her voice was impatient. State your business and leave. The tower master isn't here. She was Fina, the wise tower master of the Blue Magic Tower, a sixth circle mage, even though she looked like a child. She glanced at Alon and waved her hand. I'm very busy. Say it quickly. Alon stood there, puzzled by her attitude. Her words left him silent for a moment as he stared at the tiny mage in disbelief. A memory from the game came to him. He said to himself, I know her. I've seen her in the main story. Right now, she's still only the wise tower master because the main story hasn't started yet. But in the game, she was remembered as a once-in-a-lifetime genius, a prodigy who reached the 8th circle at the age of 20, eventually becoming the tower master. He straightened up and introduced himself. I am Count Palacio. As I said earlier, I came to talk about the time gate. The girl froze in the middle of her scattered papers. Sheets slid across the desk as she searched wildly through stacks. She muttered, all right. I need the right document for that. Where is it? So, what did you say? You can eliminate the time gate. Wait, where is that file? I really need to find it. Alon kept his composure and explained. The time gate is cracking. It connects to a strange subspace that appears where magic is often used. It creates a monolith that does heavy damage. Demons and disasters come from it. The girl activated her detection spell. Her eyes glimmered as she scanned him. She scoffed. With such low-level talent, what are you planning to do? She waved her hand. Whatever, just leave. Alon froze. He thought, this is not how it's supposed to go. He needed her help. He tried to stay steady. I need an answer. But she squeezed her eyes shut, annoyed. You want to eliminate the time gate and take the treasure? Of course you do. Everyone says that. She slammed her hand on the desk, her voice rising. Do you have any idea how many people come here every single day with the same story? Alon felt wronged. He pushed his frustration down and said, I am telling the truth. Guide me to the time gate and I will prove it. He asked himself, why won't she believe me? Why is she so? His thought cut off as he saw her glare back at him, clearly not convinced. The Vice Tower leader clicked her tongue and spoke sharply. Listen, I get that you need something big to change the public's opinion. People are starting to find out that the only reason you became Count was because you got lucky when your siblings died. A violent wave of mana burst from her, chaotic, heavy, swirling through the tower like a storm. She went on, but that doesn't mean you can storm in here and cause trouble for us. She had no idea who she was provoking. She didn't know she was talking to the Great Moon. Alon froze, stunned. He swallowed. There's a rumor like that. Well, it fits the truth, but still, she's insane. Even though she was small and frantic, she clearly kept up with every bit of news from the outside world. Alon stared at her, realizing how scary she really was. He thought, this Vice Tower leader, she's terrifying. Evan leaned close to his ear and whispered, tense and pale, not going to lie, she scared me too. When I got annoyed earlier, she put me back in my place right away. He lowered his voice even more. And that wasn't even her full mana. If we try anything stupid, we'll drown in it. Alon sighed. I'm honestly depressed now. But then something shifted inside him. He squared his shoulders, stepped forward, and faced the Vice Tower leader directly. He declared, if I cannot eliminate the time gate, I will give my entire property to the magic tower. She stared at him, still babbling. Nonsense. I see. Alon released his energy. His voice turned cold. If you want, I will swear an oath. Not a bad deal for a little of your time, don't you think? For the first time, she gasped. Her eyes widened as she looked at Alon properly. Moments later, the two stood inside the tower's restricted zone. The Vice Tower leader said, the time gate is in here. As promised, your entire wealth becomes mine the moment you fail. Alon stepped forward without hesitation. That won't happen. Just watch what I do inside. The Vice Tower leader looked at Alon with sharp, narrowed eyes. Perfect timing. I was wondering if you were the true mastermind of your country or just a useless man who got lucky. Now I really want to see what you came here to do and what kind of mess you plan to make. If you fail this task, all your wealth becomes mine. She let out a low, evil chuckle. She said to herself, after listening to him for a while, I'm sure he's closer to the useless one. Her gaze swept over Alon from head to toe, studying every detail coldly. Unlike that strange, inhuman feeling around you, you only have a small mana hole and barely above average sensing ability. You're stuck at the very edge of the second circle. She asked, what exactly are you going to do with such pathetic magic? You're completely useless. A box appeared before them, holding the twisted piece of the time gate. The truth was simple. There was barely any need to close it. In 3 months, the gate would naturally collapse after pushing out the remaining relics. The research team had already said this. Alon spoke calmly. Not a single mage capable of closing the time gate will show up. The Vice Tower leader scoffed. And yet, the time gate inside the blue magic tower has been causing chaos for over 2 years. Her tone was almost dismissive. If you can't do anything, you can simply leave the room. Alon ignored her completely. Her expression twisted with annoyance. She laughed in disbelief, clenching her teeth. You're going to use your hand as the minimum state of your staff. Even ancient magical tomes call that a primal method, something treated like a fairy tale. The Vice Tower leader tried to stop him, her voice rising sharply. For goodness sake. Hey, you stupid brat. Stop enchanting here. Enchantment is an ancient form of magic. You can't possibly pull this off. Just leave the room. But Alon ignored her completely, continuing his quiet chant as if she didn't exist. A strange change rippled through the room. Darkness crept in from the edges, swallowing the light. The air grew so cold it hurt the bones. The Vice Tower leader's breath caught. What is this? A freezing terror washed over her as the whole room dimmed. Her body locked in place. I can't move. Everything stopped. Time itself had paused. Desperate, she activated the divine eye, wanting to see exactly what Alon was doing. The moment her vision changed, her expression collapsed. Particles cracked apart in the air, as if reality itself was breaking. And behind them, a huge red eye appeared. A demon's eye. Ancient, violent, insane. She trembled. That thing, it's insane. Then Alon's body burst with a deep red aura. The monstrous eyes snapped fully open, glaring straight at her. The killing intent was so strong it froze her soul. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't look away. She wondered, what is he trying to do inside the time gate? How is this possible for someone barely at the second circle? And what is the link between that demon's eye, the Great Moon, and Reina making the divine eye to kill the black entity? The room shook as if it would fall apart under the pressure. When she raised her head again, she saw that dark demon god's eye staying behind Alon. Her ability stopped completely. Overcome by its force, she froze where she stood. A chilling voice echoed from behind Alon. An absolute command. Stop your thoughts. Cut them off. The Vice Tower mage master went pale. Sweat covered her face as she stuttered. I understand. understand the demand. The demon god's eyes shut at once. Time, which had seemed stopped, slowly began to move again. The room fell into total silence. In that moment, the red demon moved to close the gate of time. When Alon turned and looked back, he said, "Finally, the gate is closed." His face was calm, as if he had done nothing. The ancient demon god's presence faded, leaving the mage girl stunned. Alon let out a small breath. That was easier than I expected. All I needed were special items and the correct method. He showed the relic and said, "I'll take the item Sharon crafted. I need to use it a few more times, so I used a convincing spell." Did she fall for it? But the mage girl shook even more. She struggled to steady herself, still trapped in the fear she had felt moments ago. She whispered, I won't tell anyone." Alon frowned, asking himself, why does she look like that? Did my buff fail? He sighed and said, "I appreciate the concern, but it's not needed." When he took a step toward her, she stumbled backward, almost falling. Her voice shook as she added, "I'll keep silent. I won't say a word. I can keep a secret. Honestly, seriously." Alon stared at her, confused. Why is she suddenly acting like this? Outside, the scene shifted. Alon walked toward Evan and said, "Let's go back." Before he could leave, the mage girl called out, "Wait one moment." She held out a small bottle. "This is a mana recovery potion I made." Alon accepted it and looked at the contents. A potion half-crafted by the Vice Tower Lord, and a top-grade one at that. The Vice Tower leader hesitated before asking, "Do you really like it?" Alon looked surprised and thought, 2 bottles cost as much as several lower-ranked treasures. When I checked the price, I almost fainted. He glanced toward the Tower Master's safe and wondered, is she really this thankful that I closed the gate of time? But the mage girl trembled as she answered, "That's what the Count requested. I will absolutely stay silent. Seriously, if you want, I can even make a mana oath for certainty and loyalty." Alon blinked. An oath for something like this? What is she even talking about? He paused. Wait, she's clearly misunderstanding something. Before he could explain, the air rumbled. Magical chains formed above them. The Tower Master raised her staff to the sky and began chanting, taking the mana oath. She glanced toward the Count and proudly declared, "See, I keep my word perfectly." Alon felt the tension rise. I see. She showed no intention of clearing up the misunderstanding, and he had no way to stop her. The Blue Magic Tower officially got the relic. Alon thought about what he had gained. 5 bottles of potion and an oath. For him, it was more than enough. The trip had been worth it. The scene moved to outside the tower. Alon stepped into Evan's carriage. Evan looked at the treasure in Alon's hand. "Lord Alon, is that the item from the gate? It was hard to get, but it looks more basic than I expected. Does it work as well as they say?" Alon fastened the treasure to his wrist. "Either way, this is something I absolutely needed." He focused on the bracelet, the seal of the Unholy One. He said to himself, "I'm glad I got it." The chain in the bracelet took mana from the air, and the stone inside glowed faintly. Alon murmured, "It's working." Its storage space wasn't huge, but it was more than enough for him. His mana ran out quickly, and he slumped back with a quiet sigh. A body with less mana than a support tool. He reminded himself softly, "My goal is magical research and self-protection, not fighting. That's enough." Evan tilted his head, not sure why Alon looked so tired. Alon breathed out and muttered, "By the way, what exactly did she misunderstand?" He thought of the Vice Tower Master. Her sudden politeness felt strange. When he left, she had even said, "I know you're exactly like a second circle wizard," which left him stunned. Alon thought, she's mocking me, but the reaction was familiar. Kalia had acted the same way last time, totally shaken by his butler. The memory still made him uneasy. He tried to calm himself. "It doesn't matter. I won't meet any of them again. That's good enough." The scene changed to Duke Altia. Inside the Duke's mansion, Duke Alia sat quietly with a cup of tea. "It has been a while," she said warmly. "I hope you enjoy your stay, young lady." Lady Zenonia narrowed her eyes slightly before giving Altia a sharp smile. "Of course, Alia. You haven't changed either. I'm simply glad to see you." Alia replied calmly, "It's convenient that we don't need to discuss class or authority between us." Both of them understood the situation clearly. Lady Zenonia had come for Duke Alia's alliance. Zenonia said, "Count Palatios' foresight is remarkable as always." She remembered the moment she got the Count's order to visit Alia. The Count's intentions became clear only after she followed his advice. When she arrived at Duke Alia's home, both she and Alia realized the same thing. Neither of them could match Palatonio. Their alliance existed because he ordered it. Yet, even so, they were becoming more comfortable working together. In the struggle around the Great Moon, most fights were meaningless compared to the huge influence of one person. Now, Alia spoke first. "The conference is next month. Why come today?" Zenonia replied, "The Count sent a letter the day I arrived. He gave me an excuse to visit early." Laura looked puzzled. What could it possibly be? Zenonia handed her the letter. Laura read through it, frowning. "Some nobles complained to me about this, and about your visit that day. This command." The topic moved to several noble families. "Many nobles don't suit me," Laura muttered. "There must be some misunderstanding." Zenonia nodded. "It doesn't feel like a normal apology letter. Something about it is different." Laura leaned back sharply. "There must be a plan hidden inside." Zenonia smiled. "Yes, that's why we need to talk about it. And Baron Kenya belongs to the noble faction. Marcus Martonio is a key figure in the royal faction. Viscount Bland is also tied to the royal faction, and you, Duke Alia, are an important figure among the nobles." Laura summed it up. "In short, he doesn't seem to side with either faction." Zenobia finished the thought. Which means he wants to push out the nobles heading toward extinction. Both women shivered at the idea. The thought that Alon, whom they believed to be dangerous, had sent that apology letter felt unsettling. Laura looked up, saying to herself, this must be the reason Altea needed my reputation and named me a duke, and the hangman of the West stands with him. That certainty explains everything. Zenobia nodded calmly. Then we should discuss a new plan. What plan? A plan to deal with their misunderstanding of Alon, whose letter was simply a normal apology. Yet they believed he intended to wipe out noble factions completely. Zenobia found the confusion useful and began spinning new schemes. The scene changed to the blue magic tower. Inside the tower, Fina collapsed onto the desk. The tower lord approached. Tell me in detail, Fina, why were you so nervous? She looked up, still shaken. The scene then shifted back to Alon. He sat outside, casually eating a roasted sweet potato. Evan asked, are you alright, Lord Alon? Alon nodded. I almost fainted, but it's still delicious. He breathed out and added, I want to go home. Yusha's letter should arrive soon. The scene changed to the Holy Kingdom, glowing under a beautiful sky. Yusha stood in the sanctuary wearing her priest robes. Elegant, radiant, breathtaking. Those who saw her wondered what fate awaited someone like her. A gift of beauty, yet capable of becoming something frightening. Sometime earlier, at the Blue Magic Tower, Master Salim Mardo had just returned from a long journey when a faint unease crossed his mind. He paused, frowning. He could no longer feel the presence of their time gate. Worried, he immediately went to find Fenya. When he entered her office, he found her slumped over her desk, clearly exhausted. As soon as she noticed him, she forced herself upright and told him she had finished every task he had left for her while he was away. Salim froze. This was the first time he had ever seen Fenya act this way. Normally, the Vice Tower Master would greet him with annoyance or sharp complaints, often bragging about how she had made yet another proud newcomer cry. Seeing her so quiet unsettled him. He asked calmly if something had happened. Instead of answering right away, Fenya fell forward again, resting her head on the desk. Salim watched her quietly. Fenya had become Vice Tower Master at a very young age, blessed with huge magical talent. Her pride had once been sky-high, almost unbearable, but he had never bothered to correct her personality. As far as he was concerned, geniuses like her always reached a point where they realized how small their achievements really were. Once she reached the seventh circle, humility would come naturally. That was why her current state felt so odd. Letting out an awkward laugh, Salim said his business trip to the north had taken longer than expected. He casually asked if she had been buried in work while he was gone. At that, Fenya finally spoke. With a tired face, she explained everything she could, carefully leaving out certain details. She said the time gate had been closed, and the one who did it was Count Alon Palacio. But she could not explain how it was done. She said plainly that she was bound by an oath and could say no more. Besides, she added, there really wasn't much she could explain clearly. Salim tapped his head lightly, thinking, what kind of thing could leave Fenya, someone normally bursting with pride, this quiet? Was it some impossible form of magic? Or maybe something close to origin magic itself? He gently placed a hand on her head. She did not push it away. She was too tired and shaken to react. That alone told him how deeply the experience had hit her. With a small smile, Salim leaned back. He thought quietly, Count Alon Palacio of the Asteria Kingdom. That man is far more interesting than I expected. The scene moved to Alon Palacio's home. A full month had passed since Alon's return from the Blue Magic Tower, since he got the Mark of the Corrupted. He had spent almost all his time on research, especially on phases and how they worked within structured magical setups. As Alon kept writing, he paused. He realized he had found a new rule about phase usage. There seemed to be a link between where a phase was placed and how it worked, but the exact relationship still escaped him. At that moment, footsteps sounded behind him. Alon turned, a bit startled to see Evan standing there. Evan stared at the area in disbelief. The broken ground, the burnt earth, the huge crater left by Alon's experiments. He muttered in awe that Count Alon's magic seemed to grow stronger every time he saw it. Alon let out a quiet sigh and asked if that was really true. Evan nodded, saying it no longer felt like second circle magic at all. Compared to a few months ago, Alon's spells worked on a totally different level. Alon looked at the crater and said a normal gravity spell should never cause that much damage. Even at full power, a second circle gravity spell shouldn't crush something so completely. Inside, Alon knew that was right. He thought, I really am getting stronger, and this doesn't feel like my imagination. In the end, the only real improvement he had made was greater stability, not more destructive power. That made the situation illogical. Alon told Evan there was no clear reason for his magic's firepower to suddenly increase. Maybe, he suggested, he was just in better shape these days. Evan accepted that, though he didn't look convinced. Changing the subject, Evan said Yusha's letter had come. Alon thanked him and said he'd go to his room to read it. When Evan asked if he would keep training, Alon said he had already used up his daily limit, 3 full uses. As Evan left, Alon's thoughts wandered. If there was a reason his magic had gotten stronger, could it be a reward tied to a curse? In some Eastern rituals, a curse worked like a trade. The caster lost something, health, life, life or fate, but got something back in return. But Alon quickly pushed the idea away. There was no one from the east anywhere near him. Walking with Evan behind him, he thought, could it be from receiving faith? He scoffed inside. He was just the count of a small, unimportant kingdom that the underworld ignored. That made even less sense. In the end, Alon shook his head. Some mysteries didn't give answers easily. For now, it was enough to move forward. Whatever the reason, the power hadn't hurt him, so he decided to stop thinking too much. Sometimes the only choice was to keep going and see where the path leads. The scene then moved to the Holy Kingdom of Rosario, inside its capital city, Reincarnated. Reincarnated was a city of pure white stone, a holy place where people worshipped the goddess of the moon and peace. The air itself felt serious and calm, as if faith filled every breath. Inside the Eastern Prayer Hall, Yusha stood silently before a huge statue of the goddess. Moonlight came through the high windows, covering her in a soft glow as she prayed. Footsteps echoed behind her. A holy knight approached and greeted her respectfully, calling her sister. Yusha turned to face him. Her presence was calm yet powerful, graceful, dignified, and stunningly beautiful. With a gentle smile, she asked if Sir Lockhart was well. Locke stiffened a little. Even though Yusha didn't wear the sash of holy grace and held no official rank equal to a paladin, he knew by instinct that she was far above him. Without pause, he bowed deeply. He reported that their recent mission had been a success. Thanks to her guidance, they had saved 8 children and 25 villagers from a far settlement in the eastern region. Yusha quickly waved off the praise, saying the credit belonged to Locke alone, since he was the one who did the deeds. Locke shook his head and spoke from the heart. She was the one who had taught him everything, who had guided him when he was lost and knew nothing. For that, he would always be grateful. His thoughts went back to the past. For nearly 20 years, Locke had lived in despair, unable to feel divine power. No matter how hard he prayed, he had almost given up completely when someone came to him and asked if there was something he wanted with all his heart. That person had been Yusha. With her calm face and deep red eyes, she told him to place his faith in the moon. Confused and desperate, Locke asked what the moon really was. Yusha only said he would understand once he tried. Holding on to that tiny hope, he prayed to the moon for several days, just as she told him. Then, impossibly, a miracle happened. He awakened to divine power, finally able to use it like others. The joy was too much, but along with that joy came doubt. He feared he had done something against the faith by praying to the moon instead of directly to goddess Geonmma. Yet the holy artifacts of the goddess still answered him, glowing bright in his hands. That proved his power was real. One day, he asked Yusha why she had pointed him to the moon instead of the goddess herself. Yusha smiled softly and explained that faith was an invisible belief, one that often took a long time to show itself. She said it was much easier to draw strength from something that clearly existed. She told him the moon would always be there, watching over him. Standing by a big window, Yusha had rested her hand against the moonlight glass. In that moment, Locke finally understood. The goddess and the moon were one and the same. For people weighed down by doubt, belief needed something they could see. Deeply moved, Locke bowed before her, thanking her from the bottom of his heart. In the present, Yusha gently said that if Locke really wanted to show his thanks, they should pray together. She stood before the largest statue of the goddess, her posture perfect, bathed in moonlight. Her calm smile and noble presence made her look like a goddess herself. Locke answered without pause, saying he would pray with her as many times as needed. Yusha then told him he had come at the perfect time. The prayer was about to start, and many believers had already gathered inside. When the huge doors of the prayer hall opened, a giant crowd came into view. Countless worshippers filled the hall, heads bowed in respect as a serious mood settled over the space. Yusha walked forward to the raised stage while Locke took his place before it among the faithful. Stepping onto the stage, she turned on a ceremonial tool. Raising her hand to the crowd, she spoke in a calm, clear voice. She announced that the prayer to the great moon would now begin. In that moment, she stood not just as a person, but as Yusha, a sister of the Holy Kingdom of Rosario, guiding the faith of everyone before her. The scene changed to Alon Palasio's office. Silence hung in the air. Alon sat behind his desk, holding a letter. He had already read it more than once. The letter was from Yusha. As he read it again, he saw once more that there was nothing unusual inside. It only talked about her daily life. When he finished, Alon let out a slow sigh. Nothing special had happened. That meant she was living well. He lowered his head and rested his forehead on the desk, the letter still in his hand. To him, this was proof that the children were safe, living normal lives, just as he had hoped. And yet, a small feeling of loneliness crept into his heart. Of the 5 children he had raised and guided away from becoming forms of sin, only Yusha kept sending him letters. The others stayed silent. From their view, it made sense. To them, Alon was just someone from the past, a man they barely knew, who had stepped in briefly and then vanished. He told himself that was fine. His goal was never to be remembered or thanked. His purpose was complete the moment they chose paths that wouldn't lead to the world's end. There was no reason to feel sad. Alon repeated that to himself, trying to accept it. Still, his tiredness showed on his face. Even with her own busy life, Yusha kept writing regularly. Half of him felt comforted. The other half felt a quiet ache he didn't want to admit. At that moment, a voice spoke in the room. Evan asked if Alon was busy. Startled, Alon lifted his head quickly. He hadn't noticed Evan there. He said Evan had scared him and asked if he was still there. Evan answered calmly, saying he had stayed because new information had come come from the Information Guild. That caught Alon's attention right away. He asked Evan to report. Evan told him the news was about one of the children. Alon told him to go on. Evan then said the report was about Raiden, the child Alon had asked about before. Evan told him that, according to confirmed information, Raiden had become a pirate. Alon was clearly shocked. He repeated the word inside his head, disbelief filling his thoughts. Piracy meant lawlessness, bloodshed, and cruelty, far from the life Alon had pictured for the child. Holding back his reaction, Alon demanded a full explanation. Evan kept going, clearly ready for the weight of what he was about to say. He told Alon that among all the rumors, the biggest ones were about Seol Rang and Deos. At the name Seol Rang, Alon's attention sharpened. Evan explained that Seol Rang had already won 32 fights in a row in official matches. Out of the 100 wins needed to qualify, she was almost one-third of the way to earning the title of Baba Yaga. The moment Alon heard the number, his face changed. 32. He stopped Evan and asked who currently held the longest win streak. Before Evan could fully answer, Alon remembered the name himself, the Lion King, the warrior known for a 41 win streak. Evan confirmed he was right. Alon leaned back a little. In the game, the Lion King had been an extremely strong character, someone who briefly joined the player's party and crushed battlefields with raw power. He wasn't just strong, he was a symbol of being the best. The colony's military balance depended on people like him. And yet, Seol Rang was getting close to that level. Alon felt disbelief creeping in. He muttered that Seol Rang was about to pass even the strongest pillar of the colony. The thought brought both pride and unease. He had guided her so she wouldn't become a disaster, but her growth was now touching the world of monsters. Evan then moved to the next report. He told Alon about Deos. According to the intelligence, Deos had personally killed one of the 8 barbarian chiefs, Kurga of the Snowfield. At that name, Alon's face tightened. Evan added that Kurga had been the leader of a barbarian group that did horrible rituals, turning themselves into monsters through blood sacrifices. He carefully asked if Alon knew them. Alon didn't answer out loud. His thoughts went back to the past. He knew them all too well. In the game, the barbarian tribes had been threats that kept coming back. Alon had fought them many times, and in the end, he had been the one to destroy their god, Alterus. He thought quietly that Alterus only appeared after the 5 deadly sins came together, which meant one thing. As things stood now, Alterus would not show up. Alon finally spoke calmly, saying this meant there was no longer any reason to worry about Das. Evan smiled brightly at that and added that Deos was now widely seen as standing on the same level as Reinhardt, the first sword. That comparison made Alon pause. Reinhardt was not a title given lightly. Alon thought to himself that maybe it was time for him to meet Das in person. Evan then gave the 4th report, this one about Rennie. Renee had become an appraiser, a rare expert who could analyze artifacts and carve black runes into them, greatly boosting their abilities. Hearing this, Alon was truly surprised. He muttered that he didn't even know such a job existed in this world. The idea interested him deeply, but he felt a quiet sense of relief. Then his face changed suddenly as a thought hit him. He asked Evan the real question, the heart of the matter. Did Raiden really become a pirate? Evan answered without waiting. He asked if Alon knew about the 7 archipelagos off the coast of Rexus City. He explained that these archipelagos were famous, known as the area where the greatest pirates of the era gathered. Then he told the truth. Raiden had become the captain of the first archipelago, the biggest and most powerful of the 7. The moment Evan finished, Alon jumped up like he'd been hit by lightning. He shot out of his seat so fast he looked like a doll pulled by strings. He shouted that it was impossible. Inside, a strange sense of déjà vu hit him. Memories from his past life came back. Old internet posts he had once laughed at. One stuck in his mind, a person joking about donating for years so Roan could live a proud but normal life, only for him to become a pirate. That silly joke had now become real. Alon felt tears building as he muttered that he hadn't sent Raiden to Rexus to become a pirate. Evan stayed calm and kept explaining. He said Raiden had a special talent for finding enemies and sensing danger. More than that, he reminded Alon that Raiden was a rare sea godkin, a being naturally connected to the ocean, able to move through water freely. Evan added that the seas near Rexus were filled with priceless relics from ancient times. Because of this, he had first suggested Raiden follow the path of a treasure hunter, a job with huge potential and honor. But things had grown way beyond that. Evan pointed out that the captain of a great pirate archipelago was, in practice, no different from a lord ruling an island. That position came with political power and total control over the seas. Alon could no longer deny it. He leaned back, thoughts racing. He wondered how Raiden could have beaten the previous captain of the first archipelago. Alon knew the truth well. Every archipelago captain was superhuman, and none had ever lost a sea battle. That left only one possible answer. Raiden must have found something incredible. Alon figured that Raiden likely discovered and claimed real relics of the old era, artifacts strong enough to flip the balance of the seas. In his past life, Alon himself had spent countless hours chasing such relics through a mini-game called Treasure Hunter, the very game world he now lived in. He put a hand on his forehead, totally drained. He thought bitterly that he had always known this world would never go the way he expected. But even so, this outcome was strangely not the worst. Actually, it was almost impressive. Letting out a long breath, Alon fell back into his chair, completely limp, as if life had left his body for a moment. Seeing this, Evan rushed over and asked if he was okay. The scene moved to the very center of the Principality of Korkia, the giant sea city of Rexus, a city of endless sails and salt-stained stone. Rexus was the gateway between land and sea. Past its wide coastline lay the infamous 7 pirate paradises, lands ruled not by law but by blood, strength, and greed. Among them, the strongest was the first archipelago. Once, this place had belonged to the great pirate Alcaride, the Red Slayer, a man who bought the protection of the so-called Heavenly King with huge wealth and payments. His rule ended the day he was beaten. The one who struck him down was Raiden. Now Raiden stood on a rooftop looking over the sea, the wind pulling at his cloak as the sunset painted the sky red. A small smile rested on his lips, the smile of someone who had climbed to the top through blood and fire. He was now the captain of the first archipelago. Raiden leaned against the wall, cracked his neck lazily, and muttered that he still didn't understand what the Great Moon really was. He had never cared enough to think deeply about it. At first, the Great Moon had just been someone he felt thankful toward, someone who changed his fate. He had been meant to die as a test subject, cut apart piece by piece. But because of the Great Moon, he had met Yusha, and because of that meeting, his power woke up. In truth, Raiden felt he had been following Yusha's will much more than the Great Moon's. Even during his time as the Blue Moon, it felt less like devotion and more like obeying her lead. So now, when he got a direct order from the Great Moon, an order wrapped in vague words about becoming a treasure hunter, he couldn't understand its meaning. What did treasure hunting have to do with revenge? His thoughts grew dark as memories came back. Once, his clan had lived peacefully on a forgotten island. No one knew they were there. They hurt no one. Then the black things appeared. A strange power came without warning and killed his people. Those who lived fled to another land, only to be hunted down by so-called hunters. His parents, tired and hurt, were killed without mercy. Raiden himself was caught and sold as a slave. Standing now at the edge of a sea cliff, staring at a far city glowing under the dying sun, Raiden clenched his fists. He didn't believe that becoming a treasure hunter or getting some gift from the Great Moon had anything to do with the revenge he had sworn. If anything, he would just pretend to follow the order, at least for now. As he looked across the sea, he saw a big ship in the distance. Laughter came from it, fireworks bursting into the sky as celebration filled the air. Rand frowned. Why were they celebrating? Then realization hit him like a lightning bolt. That ship belonged to the chosen captain of the 7 archipelagos, the very ones who had once hunted down his parents. A proud voice from the ship declared that only those chosen by fate could get the Heavenly King's protection through wealth. Raiden's smile vanished. His face turned pitch black. So this was it. He had finally found the bastards who killed his parents, and now they had risen to power. He muttered coldly that the Heavenly King was spreading lies on purpose. Raiden knew the truth. The power those captains held didn't come from money or divine favor. It came from a secret ritual, one that needed the body parts of Sea Godkin. Only by offering their flesh could someone get the power of the Sea God clad. Every captain of the 7 archipelagos had done that ritual. As the laughter and fireworks went on, Raiden's breathing grew heavy. His eyes shook with held-back fury. In a low, broken voice, he understood the final truth. Those cursed hunters had split his parents' bodies into 7. The moment he realized this, he felt a crushing wave of rage, joy, and confusion all at once. Even though Lian had never told his story after being saved by the Blue Moon, it seemed as if the Great Moon had planned everything from the very start. It was as if, keeping a promise, he had given him the chance for revenge. But just because the chance for revenge had come didn't mean he could act right away. Lian knew he was no match right now for the captains who held the power of Cleod. He was strong, but not strong enough to beat those who had reached superhuman levels. As he began to think, it didn't take long for Lian to see that the answer was in the gift the Great Moon had given him. The gift, called the Goggles of Amrita, could light up countless relics buried under the sea, making them easier to find. After discovering that some of these relics could make up for his power gap against the 7 archipelago captains, Lian realized that everything had been planned from the beginning. At the same time, he understood the Great Moon's true goal, revenge and rule over the 7 archipelagos. The moment he saw this, the Great Moon became much more than just someone he was thankful to. Not only had the Great Moon laid everything out before Lian, but he had also given him the strength to get revenge. From start to finish, everything had been planned. Lian muttered to himself, for the Great Moon. These words had once meant nothing to him, just a simple phrase without real weight. But now, for the Great Moon, no longer felt empty. Now, when those words left his mouth, they carried true meaning. Only then did they hold the weight of loyalty. About 3 months had passed since the news of the 5th son becoming a pirate had reached him. As the painfully hot summer began to fade and the forest leaves started turning red, Alon got into a carriage. He was on his way to the grand church held every 2 years at Duke Rotra's estate. I'd rather skip this if I could, he thought. While his body rode in the carriage, Alon's mind was full of reluctance. The dark reputation of the Count Palacio family had long faded because they'd done nothing for years. But what replaced it was mockery, and that bothered him. Still, the reason he went through with it was that all nobles of Asteria had to attend the grand church every 2 years. There was a strange rule that required attendance once every 2 cycles unless there was a very good reason not to. So Alon found himself in the carriage heading to the grand church, soon to be joined by 2 other nobles. This was planned, since mercenaries or bandits often attacked nobles during the grand church season. Traveling in bigger groups was safer. As nobles, they had enough guards to avoid trouble, but even getting into a fight could cost good men. So they increased their numbers from the start to avoid any problems. Through this understanding, Alon naturally traveled with 2 families from the east, and the day passed without any trouble. The problem came that night. One said, "Count Palacio, isn't it a bit much to have only 1 guard? Is it a money issue? If you're short on funds, I could help." Another said, "It seems you've gotten your title in a rush, and now your finances are in trouble." Alon stared in disbelief at the 2 nobles who had gone out of their way to openly mock him. Alon already had some idea why the nobles so openly ignored him. It was because all the rumors had finally died down. Until now, the nobles had feared Alon, believing he was the mastermind behind taking down Avalon, which had controlled the vast eastern underworld along with Leo. But the nobles no longer saw Alon as the mastermind. After he became count, he had done nothing big for years. Alon decided to ignore them, thinking, there's no need to entertain these fools. He wasn't stupid enough to fall into such an obvious trap. That day, Alon ate 2 ears of corn, using the jeers from the 2 counts as background music. He said the roasted corn tasted even better in the slightly chilly weather. It would have been nice to have some butter. Going to the cold northern lands, a place where no living being should survive, was gripped by a never-ending, life-draining frost. In this bleak, cursed land painted forever gray by the relentless blizzard, a man had fallen. Where his right arm should have been, a red blood stain marked the spot, and his left eye socket was empty. This man was none other than one of the 8 barbarian chieftains, the great Culkin, now waiting for death after being beaten by the cowardly knights of Caliban. But even in his last moments, his eyes burned with rage. He cursed those dishonorable dogs. His anger wasn't because of his defeat. To the barbarians, death in battle was a proud end, a noble fate. Culkin's fury came from the dishonorable way he was struck down, caught in an ambush, tricked by the knight's lying challenge to a duel. Blood spilled from Culkin's mouth as his world grew dim. The gray landscape blurred, and his ears slowly stopped hearing the bitter winds. Even with all his anger, his mind began to sink into darkness. Just as everything was about to fade to nothing, Culkin whispered the name of the great god Altus. At that very moment, time seemed to stop. The dim, fading sight cleared. The harsh northern wind blew in his ears again, and his mind, slipping into unconsciousness, began to rise. A voice echoed, "Child of blood, call my name. Call upon the great name that you worship. Call my name, and I shall grant what you desire." As if ordered by a god, Culkin, in a trance, murmured, "Great god Altus, I dare to call your honorable name." And in that moment, the demon smiled and said, "Do that, and I shall grant your heart's desire." For the next few days, the uncomfortable living together continued. Every evening, Count Krill and Count Edlon came out to throw their mocking words, and every time, Alon pretended not to care, brushing off their words like they were nothing. The one who ignores and the one who tries hard not to be ignored, naturally, the one who ignores always wins. Alon had deeply learned one of the life lessons from a certain online community: don't feed the trolls. At least here, no one could beat him at that game. Of course, after several days, other nobles also began to mock Alon, whispering that he had no dignity as a noble or laughing at him for staying silent under the insults of Krilda and Edlon. But even so, Count Krilda and Count Edlon, who kept mocking him, were not feeling very satisfied. Count Krilda growled, "Damn it, this is absurd." He frowned as he looked at Alon from a distance. Even though they had been mocking him, they were the ones being ignored, which was naturally maddening. But after a moment of sour faces, they exchanged low whispers. "Did you check?" "Yes. And it seems he has no extra guards." The truth was, the reason the 2 counts had openly mocked Alon wasn't just to let out their anger. It was also to check his security. They went on. Even with a secret checking artifact, there was nothing. Just that foolish brat and that rogue knight sitting beside him. So the rumors are true after all. It seems certain. If he had any forces, he wouldn't be moving around alone. Then we can move forward with the plan. The reason the 2 counts had been digging into Alon was because they were planning to expand into the underworld. They knew well that Alon had no interest in the underworld and that because of that, it had become overrun by packs of scavengers. While the rumors about Alon were already widely believed, the 2 counts, having been tormented by the Palacio family for so long, wanted to see the truth for themselves. They needed to be sure that Alon really had no power left. After days of checking and confirming that Alon had no personal guards, a smile spread across their faces. "The gods are smiling on us. Who would have thought we'd get a chance to step into the underworld?" While most nobles were afraid to enter the underworld, these 2 were different. Just as the 2 were about to go back to where the other nobles were gathered after finishing their private talk, monsters appeared. It happened suddenly. Under the cover of darkness, monsters came out. It was like they had been lying in wait, staying silent until a soldier spotted them by chance and shouted. At that moment, monstrous cries echoed from the forest, as if on cue. Right away, the mercenaries and knights, as if they had practiced it, drew their weapons weapons to protect the nobles. Wizard, give us light. A wizard, brought along by a noble just to show off at this grand church event, answered the knight's order and cast a ball of light into the sky. In an instant, the mercenaries and knights who had been noisy just seconds before fell silent. What they saw when the wizard's light lit up the dark forest were goblins. The knights, holding their weapons beside the mercenaries, also knew this was a terrible situation. Even if there were only hundreds of goblins, this fight would be very bad for the knights. Alone, they might manage, but the knights had nobles to protect now, and goblins were cunning monsters who could easily take advantage of that. While the mercenaries seemed frozen with fear at the goblins' strange looks and Mark's death, the knights, who could sense magic, were aware of something more. They realized the goblins before them were filled with magic power. Even a little magic inside a monster makes its body much stronger, and the knights knew this well. Just as the knights were frowning at the goblins' strange howls and their coming charge, a wall of stones and rubble suddenly rose from the middle of the goblin horde. All eyes shot toward it. The wizard who had cast the light spell knew that this wall was a rock wall, a third-tier spell. As a see-through barrier of a second-tier shield formed past the wall, the knights' faces changed from despair to confusion. The goblins' evil stares were now fully locked on the wall. A calm voice cut through the air. Enhance. And then, compress. With a loud crack, the clear sphere quickly shrank, twisting the stone wall as it fell inward. In the silence that followed, the sound of footsteps pulled the knights and mercenaries' eyes toward one place. A man was walking closer. Even in this life-or-death moment, he looked completely unfazed, moving with a blank face. The nobles and knights quickly saw that the man was Count Palacio. As soon as his lips moved again, the round shield changed into a rough, rock-like shape about the size of a soccer ball you might see by the roadside. Then he said, "Return to origin." With Alon's final words, the bracelet on his wrist began to glow with a faint gray light. The pressed stones burst outward like a shotgun blast, tearing dozens of goblins into bits. It all happened in a flash. The nobles, knights, and mercenaries stood in stunned silence, mouths wide open as they watched the magic-filled goblins get ripped into lumps of meat. Among them, Count Krilda and Count Edelin's eyes grew so wide they looked ready to split. With all eyes now on Alon, he simply said, "Stop standing there in a daze and get ready." His voice was calm as he looked ahead. The knights and mercenaries, as if under a spell, raised their swords. The fear that had been growing in their hearts had, like magic, disappeared completely. The battle with the goblins ended in victory. Because the knights and mercenaries stayed calm, the front lines held strong, and Alon's magic once again destroyed a group of enemies moving to attack the nobles from behind, quickly turning the fight in their favor. Of course, with hundreds of changed goblins, there were some deaths, but the number was small compared to the size of the battle. The final blow came when a knight drove his sword through the last goblin's head, ending the fight completely. As soon as the soldiers were sure the battle was over, they let out deep sighs of relief and turned their eyes toward Alon, who was looking down at the goblin bodies. Even though he had just been in a life-or-death struggle, his face showed nothing, as if the battle hadn't touched him at all. The mercenaries looked at him with awe. They couldn't forget the sight of Alon turning dozens of goblins into chunks of meat without even blinking. But while the knights and mercenaries admired Alon, inside he was thinking, "I nearly died in a single strike." Even though his face was blank, his heart was racing wildly, and he was working hard to calm it down. Even with the insignia of the impure, which let him cast 3 times more spells than usual after using walls and shields twice, he had been reduced to a normal man because of his tiny mana pool. It's a good thing the knights won, he thought. Though the knights and mercenaries had almost no chance of losing, even against these changed goblins, when he had lost all ability to defend himself, he had felt pure terror. He thought, maybe I should have just dropped out earlier. No, it was a good thing I stayed close. But more than that, Alon praised his past self for acting with reason. Having calmed his heart, he turned his eyes to the goblin in front of him, his face growing serious. He knew all too well what the purple amethyst coming from the goblin's body meant. Why a divine descent? He asked himself. This was a strange thing that happened among the monsters of the continent when an outer god tried to come down into the world. The monsters touched by a divine descent became more wild and physically stronger. While the current group of soldiers could handle the monsters they'd face on the way to the Duke's land, Alon was worried that a divine descent had happened at all. This meant an outer god would soon come down to the land. Usually, such gods couldn't come unless one of the 5 great sins appeared. But now, even these borderland gods were about to arrive. This can't be good, he thought. The coming of outer gods was a serious matter for Alon. While not as disastrous as the great sins, if these gods started running wild, whole kingdoms could vanish easily. There were only 6 kingdoms on the continent besides the Empire, meaning a 1 in 3 chance his future plans would be wrecked. In fact, if he was lucky enough to even think about his future at that point, he'd count himself blessed. Alon's face grew serious as he stared at the goblin, but there were others who looked even more serious than Alon. So serious, in fact, that their faces looked like they had lost everything. Those 2 were Count Krella and Count Edlon. The next day, they arrived at the Duke's estate. But Alon wanted only one thing: sleep, and I'll do the same. The scene opens inside Alon's castle castle, where a grand party is happening. The hall is filled with decorations covered in gold, clearly built to show off wealth. Alon casually says the point is to flaunt money and hints that taking one wouldn't even matter, though something about the air feels off. Nearby, young noble ladies admire the scene and praise Duke Liger for his skills. The Duke answers in a flirty way, enjoying the attention, while others around him worry about his health. Watching all this, Alon thinks to himself that nothing good ever comes from joining noble circles, and he has no wish to be part of their world, even though he still has to finish the required steps. At that moment, someone calls out to him. Alon turns and sees the same two annoying nobles from before. Shaking with fear, they come to him carrying gifts, clothes, gold coins, and call him Count Palladius. They politely ask for a moment of his time and offer the best meat from their land, suggesting he take it. They also say they want to support his territory. Alon wonders why they are suddenly acting this way. He gives them a cold, sharp look, making both nobles panic inside as they read his face as a serious threat. To them, it feels like a silent warning not to cross him. The story then goes back to a day earlier, right after the goblin battle. Back then, the two nobles had watched Alon beat the goblins using only his mana. They were left totally speechless, frozen in terror by what they saw. One asks the other if he saw it, while the other nervously calls it magic. Soon after, another noble urgently calls out to Baron Armin, begging to borrow his wizard. Baron Armin is shocked by the sudden request. It is then explained that the Baron had brought a third-tier wizard just to show off his money. The two nobles take the wizard aside, claiming they have a question. They ask about the magic used earlier, thinking it must have been second-tier at best. The wizard says it was definitely not second-tier and explains that the spell was way past his own level. Hearing this, both nobles freeze in shock as they realize the magic must have been third-tier or higher. They decide that Count Palladius must have crushing power, even if it seemed like luck. To them, the situation feels like a total mess, and their chances of survival seem almost zero. They remember the rumors about Pelagio being cold, cruel, and hiding his real nature. Sure that he only spared their lives because of a bribe, they give up and can do nothing but pray. The memory of Alon's death glare haunts them, and they cling to each other in fear, breaking down in tears. The story then returns to the present. Still shaking, the two nobles bow deeply before Alon and beg for mercy, ashamed of their earlier rude behavior toward Count Palladius. They curse their own foolish pride and big dreams, realizing they had totally lost their minds. Filled with fear and regret, they beg desperately for forgiveness, hoping to escape his anger alive. Seeing the nobles act this way, Alon gets clearly annoyed. Evan quietly whispers to him, pointing out that Alon seems to be using the truth here as well. Alon thinks he can't even begin to understand what Evan is thinking. Evan comments on those nobles and casually suggests maybe they should just kill them. He then adds that making a scene would only be more exhausting. Alon thinks to himself that no matter how impressive or cool the country might be, things have crossed a line that can't be ignored. Inside, he makes an annoyed face and thinks that even though he doesn't have the strength to act wildly, they should be as scared as they want. Outwardly, Alon gives the nobles a sharp death glare and tells Evan he will deal with it separately. The nobles immediately start crying, sure they are completely done. In their minds, this is a huge problem, and they believe they are already dead. The scene then moves to Alon eating at the party. While calmly enjoying the food, he thinks about how Evan was sent to the Information Guild and hopes to hear some updates about the nobles. As he looks around the hall, he sees two men talking quietly. Alon senses they are having a secret talk and uses magic to boost his hearing. He listens closely. The two men discuss rumors about a baron and mention the Duke of Alia and the Count of Zenonia. They accept the situation and note that those nobles are now trying to build factions. One admits he never trusted the alliance from the start. Hearing this, Alon thinks it's no big deal and sees no reason to worry. He figures the two dark families have never liked each other, so the alliance won't last long anyway. Relaxed, he keeps eating and is impressed by the taste, thinking the egg tart is really good. As he keeps listening, the talk takes a more shocking turn. The men mention something even more surprising and warn each other to be careful. After hearing it, they reveal that the head of the faction is neither of the two nobles they just named. When the name Pelagio comes up, Alon is stunned. They go on, saying clearly that the head of the faction is called Count Palladius. Alon is so shocked that the egg tart slips from his hand. Inside, he questions what they are even talking about. He remembers seeing the Duke of Alia only once when she was young and meeting young I of Zenonia only a couple of times. He also knows that the current Count of Zenonia has never even met him in person. To him, the spread of such crazy rumors makes no sense. He thinks the information is overblown and mostly fake at first glance, deciding this is just how noble rumors work. Just then, someone comes up to him and calls him Count Palladius. Alon feels uneasy, wondering why so many people are talking to him today. The man introduces himself as Carmine, the third son of Duke Ian from the Kingdom of Ashton, and greets him politely. Alon finds it dull but notes inside that even nobles from allied countries come to the ambassador church. He answers politely, introducing himself as Count Palladius. Carmine smiles and says he heard Alon really became a count, showing envy, and asking about his face and if there's some secret. Watching from the side, Evan thinks to himself how surprising it is that even fools talk so boldly these days. Suddenly, another man steps in and confronts Carmine, accusing him of ignoring and insulting the nobles of Asteria. Carmine panics and denies it. In his head, Instead, he wonders what went wrong. He believed everything was harmless. The story then explains who Carmen Kalin is. He is described as a flashy, romantic man from a faraway land. He is the youngest of the Ligren and has come to take Yanga as his wife. He invites people to try the amazing tarts that Yiga brought. After some time, Carmen goes up to Yungai and asks her for a dance. In his thoughts, he tells himself there is no such thing as a perfect woman every day. As he looks around, he suddenly notices someone and reacts in disbelief. He makes careless comments about a young lady needing to watch her figure and complains about someone nearby snoring loudly. He then notes its lucky Lady Ligan is beautiful like her mother and thinks of it as his moment to impress. Embarrassed and irritated, Young answers by suggesting they rethink their marriage proposal. Carmen is shocked and calls out to her, but she leaves without looking back. For reasons unknown, the marriage proposal with the youngest daughter of the Lot family falls apart. Left behind, Carmen fumes inside, thinking about how much he suffered just to come here and how unbearably annoying everything has become. Carmen's eyes slowly shift toward Alon. He sticks out his tongue a bit and grins, noticing the same hair color and the cold look. In his mind, he connects those features and decides the man must be Count Palladius. He remembers hearing rumors that the Count was just a lucky fool with no real ties. To him, someone like that feels like the perfect, easy way to blow off stress, and he quietly decides to act tomorrow. The scene now returns to the present. Several nobles and dukes glare sharply at Carmen and scold him for losing all respect. They remind him that the kingdom of Ashland has been a long-time ally. Carmen panics and quickly denies any disrespect, saying that was never his plan. From Alon's view, it looks like two big birds attacking a smaller one. He finds the scene strange and confusing. Even nobles with little political sense recognize the three figures standing there. They are the central pillars of Asteria. Duke Liger, a leader of the noble faction, points out that Duke Kalin is a major pillar of Ashtalin. Marquard Daniel, a strong royalist, questions whether Carmen is treating Asteria lightly. Count Palin, the core of the centrist faction, openly wonders why Carmen is being so rude. Duke Liger adds that Duke Kalin may be looking down on them. Carmen, clearly shaken, insists he absolutely does not mean that. Count Pollen pushes further, asking if there is any good reason to call nobles so carelessly by name. Carmen stumbles over his words and apologizes, admitting he was rude. Marco Mardano fixes Carmen with a death glare and scolds him for building an attitude on ignorance. Carmen freezes, unable to find what to say next. Alon quietly watches and thinks about how unlucky Carmen is to end up as a shield in front of him at this moment. He also realizes why the nobleman's spinning wheel had looked so familiar earlier. Eventually, Carmen bows deeply and says sorry to the three nobles. The Marquis answers coldly, hinting that apologies alone don't wipe away the results, and sarcastically asks if an apology could end military service. Carmen keeps apologizing over and over while the Marquis presses again, making the weight of the situation even heavier. Watching this, Alon thinks about how painful the scene is and how it reminds him of bad memories. Tearfully, Carmen leaves the area while muttering that he made a mistake so rude he almost lost his life. Duke Lawyer then turns to Alon and checks on him. Alon says he is fine, though inside he feels unsettled. He wonders why everyone is acting this way toward him today and feels an unfamiliar pressure and fear. Even as things settle, Alon's boosted hearing still catches the talk of two nobles nearby. They discuss how the powerful figures are already moving and confirm the rumors are true. They guess that if Alia and Zenonia fully step into politics, the power of their leader, Pelagio, will become crushing. Hearing this, Alon understands the chaos is being driven by those rumors. He thinks that if this goes on, it will only get more annoying, and decides it would be better to show the rumor as false. Marco Mardano then says he has never had a real talk with Count Palladius. Alon pauses briefly. The three nobles quickly decide that Alon must be very busy. They mention hearing he has been studying magic lately and bring up a valuable artifact they recently got. They offer to give him a relic that can store magic power and add that they have other presents too, asking him to accept their small favor. As Alon thinks it over, he decides that accepting might be the fastest way to end the rumor. At that moment, a system window pops up, saying Alon stays silent, unable to fight the flow of events. The notice then confirms he has gained 5 magic artifacts listed as magic recovery lines. At dawn, the scene moves to the side building of Duke Liga's estate, where a calm but meaningful talk takes place. The Marquis speaks with Alita, who wants to understand what happened. He explains that the gift was luckily well received. Among nobles, giving gifts is a normal custom, but when the item is valuable, like a relic, it means more. Such gifts are not just formal acts, they show intention. Those who want to join a faction give valuable gifts to the faction's leader as a sign of loyalty and support. Alita is relieved that permission was given. The Marquis lightly thanks her, saying it was thanks to Duke Alia's thoughtfulness. Alita then formally welcomes Mark Mardano, showing the mutual understanding behind the exchange. It becomes clear that, in truth, all these formalities carry the same hidden meaning. Altia says she is happy everyone had the same goal. She then asks how things went for the others. Marco says it was a great honor and that everyone accepted without pause. Marco thinks about the situation. Duke Alia, who rarely acts himself, had shown up in person and given his word, but only after carefully choosing the right cards. After that, they were made to go through a rite of passage that involved a sincere bribe. Even though rumors were spreading fast, this was clearly part of the current political current. Seeing how important the moment was, Mark decided he had to grab this chance. Altia's face darkens as she says they can finally start moving seriously, but only with a few chosen ones. The focus then moves to Alon, who explains that on the fourth day of the banquet, items kept being added one by one. He guesses this is because he is being treated well due to the false rumor tying him to Alia and Zenonia. He decides to take the items for now, wondering if they will later be taken back, and inside he plans it as a complete hit and run. At that moment, Evan appears from behind and puts a hand on Alon's shoulder, saying he has returned. Alon jumps with a hiccup. Evan asks why Alon looks so surprised and confirms he is back. Alon quickly brushes it off, saying he was just lost in thought for a second. The scene then moves to a private talk between Evan and Alon. After hearing Evan's news, Alon is left in shock when he learns that an outer god has come down in the north. Evan confirms it and adds that Caliban is currently in chaos. According to old texts, scholars are guessing that the amethysts are linked to the outer gods. Alon then asks about the other information he wanted. Evan tells him the person Alon is looking for is in a village north of Ashtan. Hearing this, Alon says they can stop there on the way before firmly deciding that their goal is Caliban. Evan is clearly shocked by the sudden choice and wonders why Caliban. Thinking Alon plans to go north, Alon says he will explain on the way and orders Evan to get ready to leave at once. Evan nods and leaves to prepare. After Evan goes, Alon lets out a long sigh and thinks about the situation. He had really hoped it wouldn't come to this. Disasters like the 5 great sins and the outer gods were beyond guessing. You could never know which outer god would come down or when a divine descent would happen. That uncertainty was why he had tried to gather information and act as fast as he could, but he never thought things would move this quickly. As pieces of data and chances cross his mind, game memories come back. Having seen hundreds of possible endings, the final picture now paints itself clearly. The allied kingdoms would break and fall, crumbling into ruin as they fought stupid wars in lands poisoned by otherworldly powers. In the end, his own life would be destroyed in a flash. He reminds himself he made a plan to deal with this crisis. After coming down, an outer god goes through a settling period of several months before waking as a living god. During that time, they can't fully use their power as heroic spirits, making that window the best chance to strike. Even though nothing is guaranteed, he knows he has to try. This is the only way forward. With that resolve, he briefly wonders what that kid might like. With his thoughts settled, Alon begins writing a letter. The scene then moves 1 week later. The vice commander goes to the commander and hands over the letter written by Alon. After reading it and seeing it as an official order, the commander is left in shock. He immediately speaks to the vice commander and gives a clear order. The vice commander nods and is told to let everyone know that the next northern schedule is being pushed back by 2 weeks. The scene then moves to Pran, a village north of the Ashtalan kingdom. As Alon spots someone ahead, he thinks that he never expected to find him this easily. The discovery feels unexpected. Standing before them is a bright, good-looking child who warmly greets them. Alon sees that the boy truly stands out. He immediately knows him as the main character and playable hero of the Liben roguelike turn-based RPG Psychedelia. Seeing him in person, Alon quietly admits that a hero is indeed a hero. The boy looks exactly like the drawing from the game. Alon notes that he is a boy and finds him unusually beautiful, almost too striking. Alon asks if the boy knows who he is. The child replies that he is just happy to meet someone new and introduces himself as Ellie. Alon thinks that no matter how much this world is different from the game, the hero will always stay the hero. Eventually, Elelin will become famous and strong. Alon says Elelin has a very bright personality, while inside he admits it feels strange to face a character he once played as. Alon then hands Elelin a small bag and tells him it's for him. When Alababan opens it, he finds a lot of gold coins inside. Alon then tells Evan to bring the other item. Evan steps forward, opens another box in front of Eliban, and shows it is full of potions, explaining that all of it is his. Eliban reacts with pure joy, unable to believe everything is really for him, and wonders why it's being given so suddenly. Alon explains that it's an investment. Inside, he tells himself he has brought everything needed for a hero's early growth. He tells Eliban he is doing this because Alien is meant to become a big deal later. Inside, Alon urges him to grow fast so he can one day handle threats like the outer gods in his place. As more thoughts cross his mind, Alon briefly wonders if this treatment was generous enough and thinks he must have won Eliban over. Suddenly, Alon realizes he forgot something and says his name is Count Palacio. This is the name of the supporter he should be grateful to when he succeeds. Eliban quickly corrects himself, thanks the Count sincerely, and promises to remember the name. Full of excitement, Elelin then happily says goodbye to Evan. Watching this, Alon thinks about Eliban's personality and wonders if it was always this bright. Since the story is a dark fantasy, he never thought the hero would be so cheerful. As they get ready to leave, Evan speaks to Alon, seeing his intentions but pointing out they are leaving without even a real talk. Alon says Alon is a smart kid and will understand. Inside, Alon admits his own life is at risk and he has no time to build friendship. He notes that he has basically set the hero on autohunt and has chosen pay to win as his strategy. Evan then says the child seems to have amazing talent, his mana feels thick and always moving, and even in normal clothes, he seems to have artifacts. Alon agrees, saying he felt the mana too. Alon thinks further that in the original story, Alon was supposed to be ordinary before starting his adventure. This change feels like another surprise butterfly effect, different from the game, especially since Alon is the hero. Even so, Alon decides that what matters most is keeping his plan for an easy life. Alon speaks with confidence, saying the stronger the hero gets, the better things will be, and it will all be worth the cost. He assures them that Liban is one of the few kind-hearted people in this rotten dark fantasy world, so there's nothing to fear. A moment later, doubt creeps in, and the idea of Liban being kind-hearted suddenly feels shaky. Alon then talks to Evan about Deos, saying Deos will meet him. Inside, Alon thinks he never visited before because he was scared, and he never imagined things would end up like this. Evan, full of worry, wonders if they will at least let him see them. Alon answers uncertainly, saying it will probably happen, catching the quiet sadness of a young person thrown into another world. After that, Alon goes to his room and checks all his things. Evan sees the mess and can't believe why Alon bought so many random items. Alon calmly says these items are bribes meant to be given to his future lifeline. 10 days later, the trip reaches the capital of Caliban. Kurdum, the huge northern gate of Kurum, stands ahead, tall and orderly, marking the end of a long road. As the carriage moves forward, Evan is very tired from all the travel. Boredom and exhaustion sink deep into him, and he openly says how completely worn out he feels. Alon, also tired but calm, thinks long trips are naturally draining and can't be helped. Evan, still pushing through his frustration, thinks about how the last part was made worse by the strange labyrinth they had to go through. Without it, he feels he could have at least held some pride in their arrival. Alon accepts the hardship calmly, knowing nothing could change it. While the carriage rolls on, Alon gently holds the locket in his hand and sinks into thought. He thinks about how they traveled from place to place getting ready for the coming war against the outer gods, gathering strength and giving gifts along the way. His thoughts turn to Deos, wondering if all those efforts will be enough to make him happy. Inside him stirs the heart of a father, one who wants to give without holding back. As the capital gates get closer, Evan says their turn for inspection is near. Soon after, Evan steps down from the carriage and moves ahead for the capital check. The process is meant to end with nothing more than simple ID check. He tells Alon he will be back soon. Alon, staying relaxed, waves him off and tells him to take all the time he needs. Left alone, Alon sits back comfortably in the carriage. He lets himself rest for a short moment, closing his eyes and feeling relief that at least in this city, things seem to move fast and smoothly. That calm doesn't last. Evan soon returns with a tense face and urgently tells Alon a small problem has come up. Alon asks what it is, and Evan explains they've been asked to step aside. Even though Alon's identity has been checked, something else seems to be causing worry. Without showing any shake, Alon steps out of the carriage. At that moment, a knight comes up from behind. The man wears a twisted, overly confident smile, raising an eyebrow as he gets closer. He names Alon directly, asking if he is Count Padio. The knight introduces himself as Vrain, saying he is the direct student of Master Knight Fiola, known as the Fourth Sword. With a smug look, Vrain locks his eyes on Alon, his smirk heavy with challenge. As the tension at the northern gate quietly grows, annoyance flickers in Alon's thoughts as he focuses on the unknown name Fiola. He wonders what that name even means to him, realizing he doesn't know who Fiola is at all. Keeping a cold, uninterested face, Alon openly questions the situation, pointing out that Varani has even brought knights and demanding to know what this show is about. Vin calmly says a friend of his from Asteria sent word, claiming he owes Alon a debt. Alon immediately rejects the idea, saying nothing like that ever happened. Annoyance grows inside him as a thought hits. He guesses the so-called friend can only be that overly dramatic and unstable man, Carmine. With clear boredom in his voice, Alon asks if Vaughn's friend is Carmine. Vaughn answers with a twisted smirk, raising his eyebrows as he confirms that Alon truly insulted his friend badly. Inside his own mind, Vaughn remembers his friend's furious words, how Carmine claimed he was shamed beyond words. The scene then flashes back to the past, showing Carmine talking to Vaughn through a magically made globe. Carmine looks eaten by rage and tiredness, boiling as he describes how Count Palutino bullied him hard. With the help of 3 other men, he calls Alon a bastard and tells Vaughn the Count is heading toward Caliban, demanding Vaughn strike back for him. Carmine's face darkens further as a slow, sure smirk forms. He tempts Vaughn by saying that if he really wants to get better, he will need more abyssal bodies to practice on. The memory goes on as Vaughn laughs openly, agreeing he owes his friend. He decides that at the very least, he will put on an impressive show to pay it back. At that moment, the knights who came with Varani move without warning. Together, they draw their swords and quickly circle Evan and Alon, steel flashing under the light near the northern gate. Confusion crosses both their faces as things suddenly get worse. Evan reacts by instinct, pulling out his own sword and taking a guarded position beside Alon. Annoyance rushes through Alon's mind as he sizes up the scene. He thinks bitterly that the brat started a fight on his own, ran away, and now this mess has followed him here. He sees it clearly as revenge revenge through a friend, finding the behavior low and rat-like. Vaughn then draws his own sword. He steps forward and points the blade straight at Alon's chest, his lips curling into a smug grin. He says clearly that if every valuable item inside the carriage is handed over, he might think about being lenient. He sees this as nothing more than the favor he was asked to do. Pride fills Vaughn's mind as he keeps his confident grin. He believes there is nothing for him to lose here. In his head, everything lines up in his favor. The odds lean strongly toward success. Alon, in his view, is just a minor noble from Asteria, someone with little power in the Union and zero ties to Caliban. Vaughn has checked this all out, and with that certainty, he is sure no trouble will follow his actions. Alon clearly grows angry, annoyed, and irritated by Vaughn's words, and a thought hits him that birds of a feather really do flock together. He clenches his fist, and a strong, energetic, flame-like aura forms in his hand, aimed straight at hitting Vaughn. At the same time, Vaughn charges forward with a wild grin, rushing at Alon. Alon stays calm as another thought runs through his mind. He believes that even if things go slightly wrong, his master will smooth it over. Before the clash can happen, someone suddenly appears from behind and forcefully grabs Vaughn by the neck, stopping him mid-attack. Vaughn lets out a scream of pain, mixed with the clear sound of bones breaking. The person gripping Vaughn's neck lifts him into the air. Overcome by pain, Vaughn groans helplessly as the sword slips from his hand and hits the ground below. The pain is so sharp that the veins on Vaughn's face bulge out, and he clenches his teeth hard to bear it. The one holding Vaughn by the neck keeps him up in the air while Vaughn, full of rage and pain, tries to find out who this person is and who dared to try to kill him. As the scene goes on, it is shown that the one holding Vaughn by the neck is none other than Deos. Deos makes it clear that his name doesn't matter right now, and instead he slams Vaughn's actions, saying Vaughn had no right to touch his benefactor. Vaughn hangs in the air, still groaning in pain. Sadly, the key truth that Vaughn completely missed slowly comes to light, that Count Palacio had already won a duel against Kurga of the Snowfields. Through that victory, Count Palacio earned the title of Swordless Master Knight and became known as the benefactor of Deos Malayon. Deos suddenly lets go of Veyron and throws him to the ground. Veyron groans loudly as Deos kicks him again and again without mercy. Deos then grabs Veyron's hair with an iron grip, holding him down with crushing force and keeping a cold, deadly stare. Deos turns his attention to the knights around them and gives a clear warning. If even one of them dares to move, the results will be beyond their imagination. Deus then slams a brutal kick straight into Vaughn's chest, so powerful that blood spills from Vaughn's mouth and he flies far back before crashing down. Alon watches in shock, a thought forming as he recognizes that knight, understanding that this is the present-day Deos. Deos then makes it clear to Veyron that he should be grateful to be in a place where he can't be killed. Vaughn can barely stand after the earlier hits, leaning against a tree for support. The next moment, Deos steps in and drives his knee hard into Veyron's chest, throwing him crashing into the tree once again. Veyron's cheeks swell badly from Deos's kick, and Deos keeps hitting him without pause, punch after punch, kick after kick. Nearby, Evan says to Alon that the strike was quite impressive. Hearing this, Alon's mind goes back to when Dees declared his fury at anyone daring to lay a hand on his benefactor. A thought settles in. Dees really did call him his benefactor. Alon thinks about how Deos may have been thankful when he was young, but now that he's grown, Alon thought he wouldn't welcome someone he barely knew. He remembers that Deos never even sent a single reply, and yet, it makes him feel like he has gotten every possible reward for raising a son. Alon admits to himself that Deos has truly grown, calling him a troublesome rascal in his mind, but accepting his real growth. The impression is clear, over half certain that anyone can see who sponsored Deos. He has grown up so well. Alon sees that Deos has become an amazingly upright young man. With this, Alon thinks this must be what it feels like to see a well-raised son, and he feels a deep pride as a father. A heavy impact rings through the scene. Evan then teasingly points out to Alon that he knows his son is beating someone senseless. Alon says he can't hear him. Deep down, Alon understands that Deos stepped up like this because his father had been insulted in a foreign land. As this settles in, the scene shows Deus still kicking Van without holding back at all. Another thought crosses Alon's mind. Why is his son so unbearably sweet? Soon after, Vine is shown taking a crushing beating, hit again and again until he finally passes out. Even then, Alon can't help but think this still feels a bit too much. At that moment, another thought hits Alon, reminding him once more that Deos is one of the 5 great sins. As things shift, Deos is seen turning and walking toward Alon. He stops in front of him, bows respectfully, and wears a confident smile as he says he will escort him. Hearing this, the remaining knights are left completely shocked by what they see.